This isn't a gimmick. This is not just, some trash dog food from China, okay? These are supplements and these are products that are so healthy and natural that you could actually eat it yourself. So you can see here, Positive Bison. It clearly says dog food topper. And I'm going to put this in my mouth right now. So it tastes like meat. And maybe that is disgusting to you. But I'll show you right here. Look, this is the Bison product right here. It clearly says dog food topper. You can see on camera. Actually tastes good. I'm not going to lie.
Welcome back to Posting Through It. Thanks for joining us another week. I'm Jared Holt.
And I'm Mike Hayden.
And I'm Will Sommer.
Today we're back with another installment in our Who the Hell episode series, where we sit down for a couple hours and review the life story of prominent right-wing influencers. Our previous episodes have covered Jack Posobiec, Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, Dave Portnoy, Anthony Cumia, and most recently, Charlie Kirk. You can scroll back in the feed and find those.
In this episode, we're taking a closer look at Laura Loomer, arguably the most enigmatic character of today's MAGA social media universe. Laura is a divisive person, even on the political right, but despite this, her influence on mainstream Republican politics has grown to an absurd level.
Over the last year, Laura Loomer has enjoyed more access to power than ever before. She was seen traveling with President Donald Trump on the 2024 campaign trail, and the White House has consulted her on multiple occasions. Several government officials have lost their jobs lately, thanks to pressure campaigns led by Laura Loomer.
Aside from access to the president, Laura Loomer also stands out among her social media peers for her truly over-the-top performances, her truly over-the-top antics, and that is in a field of performative people. She seems to have an inability to feel shame or embarrassment. Some people have called her unhinged, and there seems to be no limit on how far she's willing to go to get people's attention. And nothing seems to be too extreme for her to latch onto.
We nearly lost our minds preparing this episode. A lot of what we're going to cover today is a mix of sad, insane, scary, and in a lot of cases, hilarious. As we cover Laura's rise to power, we'll also explore some of the deep cuts and forgotten episodes in her career. There have been a lot of profile pieces about Laura in mainstream news outlets, and while some of those are pretty good, we felt none of them really in depth, to the full extent, unpacked the lowlights of her backstory.
So joining us this week is Will Sommer again. Listeners who have been with us for a minute will remember him from our episode about the Epstein Files debacle. He's a reporter with The Bulwark, where he writes a newsletter called False Flag. Will is one of the top chroniclers of MAGA media. I think that's indisputable. And somebody who, like us, knows way too much about Laura Loomer. What's up, Will?
Hey, happy to be here. I thought you were going to say one of the top chroniclers of Laura Loomer, which is also a sort of industry unto itself.
Yeah, no kidding.
Also true.
Before we get started, we need to give a shout out to our Patreon members who signed up recently. We're looking at it here in the Executive Club. We're seeing Christina Stevens. And in the Platinum tier, I see Diane Hansen, Jeff Mullen, Catherine Reynolds, and belatedly, Rob Granis.
Thank you to them for going extra in their support of the show, and to the hundreds and hundreds of people who have signed up for $5 a month to receive the premium feed. Jared and I love doing those episodes with you guys. We're really cutting loose on those episodes. It's been pretty fun, but after that one, I felt like I needed to wash my mouth. Thankfully, we've picked up a new sponsor, Dr. Turbo's Leather Mouthwash.
When I'm far away from home, I miss two things: my wife and the feeling I get when I lick the boots of our beloved government leaders. Dr. Turbo's Leather Mouthwash is perfect for those moments.
Sometimes DHS flies you in from England on American taxpayer money. You get to wear a little blue suit and taste daddy's boot right in your mouth. But what happens when you are sadly wished away back to England, where you can do nothing but repurpose other people's videos of Antifa Barney the dinosaur? You're going to miss the boot. Your daddy's good boy, and you are going to miss it. Well, if you're smart, you'll make sure you've always got a bottle of Dr. Turbo's leather mouthwash waiting for you at home.
Dr. Turbo's leather mouthwash. Always taste the boot.
Okay, the show is getting weirder.
Yeah.
If you're wondering what just happened, it was our first parody ad read. Members of the Executive Club can request a parody ad read and request a topic for us to cover in an upcoming episode. We just said our first one for leather mouthwash as requested by Mitch. And we're also doing a story, an episode someone requested about the Turner Diaries, I believe, Jared.
Yeah, I think that'll be next week. I'm looking forward to that. But with all of that out of the way, I've got big tits and an Ashkenazi IQ. Let's get started.
Right? And I'm going to say that. It is always the Jews. It is. And I say that as a Jew myself. I don't understand why the rich Jews of this country are so hell-bent on trying to destroy our country. But for some reason, so many rich Jews have a fixation on trying to destroy America. And it's not an anti-Semitic statement to make. I say that as a Jew myself, okay? I am very pro-Israel. I am a self-identifying Zionist, and I am not hateful towards Jewish people. But I will say as a Jew, the Jews' worst enemy is the Jew themselves. And I am really sick and tired of watching all of these Jews with large amounts of money in our country donate to fund the destruction of our nation and the communist takeover of America. So, okay, listen.
So it's 1993, and Alice in Chains is on the radio, and it's Clinton is in charge, and it's a very exciting time for America. And Laura Loomer is born on May 21st in Tucson, Arizona. She's raised Jewish, but later identifies herself as a Jewish atheist. She has a difficult home life, and her mentally ill brother attacked her family members, apparently. She goes on to boarding school to avoid her violent brother and becomes obsessed with the war on terror and watches Fox News. Does that sound right to you, Will?
That's all right. Yeah, that's she really admires Ann Coulter. She's living this she's sent to boarding school to get away from her violent brother, and this is according to a recent New York Times profile of her, and something she talks about a lot. And she's in this very kind of like George W. Bush era, real like a fear of Islamic terror.
Okay. So so she's pretty young when the war on terror is kicking off. I mean, she's just a child still, basically. So she grows up in it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And she's just like, mainlining this stuff straight to the brain.
So 2011, 2012, Laura Loomer enrolls in Mount Holyoke College, but she leaves after one semester, citing liberal culture shock. In a profile piece in the foreword, she recounts being very lonely on campus. One of the things she told reporters there was that she would eat lunch by herself every day. So her early foray into higher education is a pretty isolating, sad experience, it sounds like.
If I'm recalling correctly, I think she complained about like the amount of lesbianism there as well. There was sort of this sense that this like very sort of protean young Republican goes to Mount Holyoke and is like the Mount Holy woke, perhaps.
Well, she transfers to Barry University in Florida, where she studies communications. That is a private Catholic university. I imagine there's much less woke running amok in this Catholic college.
Sounds like she's very isolated in general at the early stops of her life.
Yeah, I think now that we've gotten into a few years of it, I mean, I think we can look at some themes that are going to start to emerge about Laura Loomer, and one of which is sort of a personality that perhaps does not get along with a lot of people and has not like built strong friendships often. And I mean, I will say, I think something we're also going to run into is this is going to sound like we're just insanely mean, but she's she's really open about a lot of this stuff. I mean, she talks about being lonely all the time, feeling her life has been ruined. And so in this case, yes, she gets there, and once again, she does not fit in. She gets really into kind of undercover activism, as I think we're about to get into here.
Yeah, because in 2015, Laura Loomer filmed something for Project Veritas. This stunt has been dubbed in a lot of profiles as the ISIS Club stunt. It resulted in her getting suspended from campus. She ended up graduating still, but what was this, Will? I mean, from what I remember, she, with Project Veritas, classic undercover camera sting thing, she goes in and tries to form a pro-ISIS club on campus, right?
And before Will answers that, for our saner listeners, what is Project Veritas very quickly?
Sure. Okay. Sure. So up top. So Project Veritas is a nonprofit. The sort of it was started as sort of the outlet for James O'Keefe, the infamous Acorn pimp, and to sort of fund and publish his undercover right-wing sting videos on various liberal targets. And now James, the one thing I think is an interesting parallel here is that James's rise to fame began when he complained to the administration at his own college that having Lucky Charms in the cafeteria was offensive to Irish Americans. And so this was sort of like can you believe these wokies fell for this kind of thing? So I don't know if he sent Laura on this mission. This is a classic Project Veritas, initiation ritual to trick your college administrators. But basically she talked to a college staffer and she said, I want to start this ISIS club, but I need a college advisor. And, can you help me start this club? But there was it was like a little, it wasn't like, don't you think suicide bombing is cool? It was a little like, don't you think like we should help people in Syria? And some of the guys like, oh, and she's like, and by the way, it's about supporting ISIS. Like, what? And so I think it was pretty misleading, and the administration was not thrilled with it. She's barred from campus, I believe. She doesn't get to walk at her graduation. And so she's sitting on the beach by campus watching, hearing the graduation with her dad. And she writes about this in her memoir, and, just feeling once again completely isolated. And there's this thing where, we're going to run into where it's like this right-wing activism is meant to sort of bring her some kind of acclaim, but also like a community or respect perhaps. And it often does not. It only really isolates her further from the world.
Okay. So she graduates from Barry without going on stage and graduates into a role with Project Veritas and James O'Keefe. So he sort of rewards her for her loyalty and her silly stunt. She starts dogging the Hillary Clinton campaign. This is, of course, like at the start of this is really the end of the Obama years, which I'm sure were not received well by Laura. She keeps trying to get them to agree on camera to commit campaign finance violations. I guess probably this is like the origin, if I'm correct, of her sort of putting cameras in people's faces, right? That style of provocation. It's not journalism, that she would go on to later call loomering people. Like she would use her last name as a verb. I guess she wasn't using it yet.
Yeah, so Laura starts doing kind of like very kind of grunt work style. This was back when James O'Keefe was kind of at the apex of his powers. And he had gotten Acorn. He had, I believe, gotten some executives fired from NPR. He had a sort of a string of successes. And so he had people across the country who were trying to infiltrate these Democratic campaigns, Democratic political organizations. And later there would be a lawsuit that would kind of put end to a lot of that. But at the time he was really balling out of control. And Laura was, I would say, produced some of the stunts that were initially marked as kind of the decline of James O'Keefe and Project Veritas. I think the most famous one was when she goes to, I think, a Hillary Clinton campaign event in New York, and she gets a Canadian woman to say, oh, geez, I really want this shirt. But, you have to like pay a donation to get the shirt. And Laura says, well, I'll essentially act as a straw donor for this $20 shirt, and I'll make the donation and give you the shirt. But really it's a donation from you because you'll reimburse me. And, this is pretty small ball stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really entrapment, because the campaign worker was like, I guess. And so this was sort of the her apex moment at Project Veritas. But even then, I remember people getting this video when no one knew who Laura Loomer was, but James O'Keefe kind of trumpeting this video. It's like, oh boy, the salad days of Acorn are behind us.
Yeah, she's in her early 20s, right? I mean, she's pretty young.
I mean, she's really young. This is like right out of college.
So I think the stunt that she does for Project Veritas during the 2016 election cycle that kind of raised the most eyebrows involved Laura going to a polling place in New York City wearing a burqa, claiming that her name was Huma Abedin, who was a very powerful Clinton aide who would go on to marry the son of George Soros. So that's a whole fucking can of worms. I don't feel like opening because we'll eat up the rest of our episode time. But so she goes to this polling place on election day 2016 and is like, I don't have an ID. I'm Huma Abedin. I'm wearing a burqa, whatever. And the polling worker does what the procedure is and says, well, we can give you a provisional ballot. And when she gets this provisional ballot, she bails out. She does not fill out a provisional ballot as Huma Abedin and submit it, because if she did, she would have committed voter fraud, which is a crime, right? But still, they take this video and they're like, look, they election fraud, right? I mean, all of this kind of stuff really went gangbusters in 2020, but I mean, it was a feature of right-wing media for so long, and that's kind of how this theme went.
It also combines sort of a couple things here, right? There's kind of a Muslim panic as well, which is sort of something Laura always likes to sort of sprinkle across whatever her activism is. That's kind of her original claim to fame and really what motivated her. And then also, yeah, as you said, I mean, there's Huma Abedin, of course, at the time, this was also when she was married to Anthony Weiner. They were getting divorced and the whole Weiner laptop thing. So Laura was perhaps figuring out more how to get in the news and have her finger on the pulse of the zeitgeist.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like looking at the headlines and picking out keywords, right? It's like almost like amateur search engine optimization of just like, you turn on Sean Hannity and it's like whatever the keywords that appeared most often, you're like, yes, something like this. But in the doc, Will, you put a quote from something James O'Keefe wrote about Laura in his book. How did he describe Laura?
Okay, yeah. I believe this is in James O'Keefe's book. It might be the forward to Laura's book. But either way, he wrote about her. She appears to be functionally immune to fear, to shame, and to embarrassment. And this is a positive review. He admires this about her. And, this is something, maybe I should have said this up top, but I think, Jared, you mentioned there have been a lot of profiles of Laura Loomer. There have been good ones, there have been bad ones. The New York Times had a pretty good one a few months ago. But I think this podcast format is going to be so good to get into it because there's a pathology here that is so, like, a lot of right-wing media figures are jerks. And a lot of them are grifters, and their motivations are pretty clear. But Laura has been through so many ups and downs, and her psychology is so bare and so obvious and so complete, so twisted in some ways that I'm excited to get into it. But in this case, you have James O'Keefe saying, she's immune to embarrassment, and that is a very important part here as we sort of enter what I would call the age of Loomer, which we are, of course, we're about to enter it in our chronology here, but we live through it to this day.
Yeah, so I had mentioned something as being kind of proto-Loomering, sort of like the early. I got a camera, we'll like see what happens when I just run up and put it in somebody's face and yell a bunch of questions at them. But this starts to like really develop, right? So can somebody, either one of you, Will, Jared, define for me what Loomering really is? Like, what is it? She is the person who coins it. Imagine, by the way, you just take your last name and turn it into a verb. That's what Laura did.
Well, unlike halting, which is something entirely different, that's not safe for work, that we can't describe on this podcast. Loomering, as you noted, Mike, is Laura's last name turned into a verb. And where I remember seeing this is when Laura kind of transitions on the tails of some of the success she's had in getting attention with these undercover stunts starts to make herself more of a main character. So instead of going undercover and secretly filming people, we have Laura Loomer as herself interrupting events, what's called barnstorming, just like showing up at book talks or catching people on the street. And, some of them she is asking questions. Other times it's just her holding a camera, screaming at the top of her lungs at people that they are terrorists and whatever else. So that's kind of Loomering, and it was always a kick, right? Because some of these videos, we'll talk about it later, but she would go to something like the Women's March, and she'd try to interrupt the speeches and be like, they support terrorism, they do this, whatever, they're anti-Semitic. And there's no journalism happening here. She's just interrupting an event. But then, she'd walk back and be like, damn, guess the Women's March got loomered today, bitch. And then, her fans would go crazy for it. They'd eat it up. But am I missing anything here?
And she would post it online, right? Of course. That was the other thing. That's the final step.
I mean,
and a lot of these too, I will also note, this is at an era where a lot of right-wing influencers are using Periscope, which is a since retired, I guess, side company feature on Twitter where you could live broadcast these things. So oftentimes these loomerings would happen in real time, or, the 10-second delay or whatever it takes to go to the internet. So not only were these broadcasted, they were broadcasted live.
I forgot about that aspect of it. It would be like Laura lurking outside of Midtown Manhattan, Barnes & Noble, and being like, I'm going to get Comey. And then she'd be like, why'd you do it, Comey? At a book sign. I guess her most famous loomer, I mean, it just follows naturally. I mean, her initial most famous loomering, of course, was at Shakespeare in the Park.
Yeah. She does a couple of things before we get there, though.
Yeah.
She participates in this pretty big anti-Muslim event that took place in New York City in 2017 called the March Against Sharia. Again, the way she is finagling for a way to generate a headline, generate some controversy. And she does this by going to the Fearless Girl statue on Wall Street, very iconic, Manhattan sort of fixture. It's been photographed 100 million times, whatever. And she puts a burqa on it. She briefly works for Pam Geller. Will, can you help me understand who Pam Geller is, and what was Laura doing for her? Do you know?
Yeah, Laura was Pam Geller is a far-right, specifically anti-Muslim, very pro-Israel blogger, sort of one of the first of the kind of conservative bloggers. She writes a site called Atlas Shrugs, and so that kind of gives you a sense of where she's coming from. And yeah, Laura was just blogging for her, but this is kind of the period where Laura is, we also have to keep in mind, this is like a few years after the Ground Zero Mosque, this kind of stuff. Like this is when there's still like a lot of anti-Muslims, like the idea that Obama's a secret Muslim. To some extent, this is kind of dissipated in our politics. But this is when like Laura was clearly like seeing this very like anti-Muslim lane, and she's learning at Pam Geller's feet how to be like an internet controversy person.
Also, the anti-Muslim lane in right-wing politics at this time was also very lucrative. I mean, you had places like the David Horowitz Center and whatever who would just dispense gobs of money to people who got into this track.
I just want to quickly interject that the March Against Sharia had a number of extremists that were involved in it across the country. I mean, obviously, you can safely call Laura an extremist based upon some of the views that she's espoused, but I'm talking about people like Billy Roper, in Arkansas, and like
it was also
he was a neo-Nazi, and
it was also one of the first public showings of the Proud Boys.
Yes, it was like a big step towards some of the stuff you see on January 6th, where you had a lot of like regular Trump supporters mixed in with hate groups. That was March Against Sharia.
So she puts a burqa on the Fearless Girl statue, and a few days later starts working at Rebel Media. which is a Canadian news publication. Like many things in MAGA media, we've got, foreign publications gunking it up for some reason. Why would I care what some random ass Canadians think about my politics? But anyway, Rebel Media at the time was big. I mean, a lot of big stars that came out of sort of the first Trump administration, people like Lauren Southern and stuff. A lot of these people made pit stops at Rebel Media. They were broadcasting on YouTube a lot, and some of their stuff would get quite a bit of play. And she gets hired by Ezra Levant to be the U.S. correspondent for Rebel Media because they needed to fill that spot after firing who? Mike? You remember who used to be the U.S. correspondent for Rebel Media?
Would it be Bumblejack Posobiec?
It's Bumblejack Posobiec who lost his job. We don't know if this is why he lost his job, but something that happened shortly before he lost his job was plagiarizing Jason Kessler, the organizer of the Right White Supremacist rally in 2017.
Well, there was one other detail, of course, which we covered on the, I believe we covered on the first, Who the Hell Is episode, which was Jack Posobiec. I recommend people go back and listen to it. It's very early posting through it, but it's a good episode. Jack was also involved in the campaign to bring hacked materials from the French elections to French, voters through Twitter, which was heavily boosted by accounts that were in Russia. And Ezra Levant was not too pleased about that because there seemed to be a lot of concern about illegality. He denied anything around that, Ezra Levant, but I'm sure the attention was not particularly nice.
So Jack Posobiec's out, Laura Loomer's in. She didn't stay very long, not more than 2 or 3 months, and we'll talk about that in a second. She's also joining alt-right protest events. She's getting more enmeshed, especially in the New York City scene of what's calling itself the alt-right at that time. And now we're at Shakespeare in the Park.
Here we go. This is 0 AD. That's when it all begins.
Yeah. We are before the crucifixion, and now we've arrived. But Shakespeare in the Park. Where do we start with this? Right?
Yeah. So this is shortly after Trump's elected, and there's a staging of the Shakespeare play Julius Caesar, and the role of Caesar is played by a kind of a Trump stand-in. So we got a big old orange Cheeto up on the stage, very obvious, very kind of hammed up Trump, and
it's a little corny, I'll say.
Yeah, I mean it's not the most subtle, and so then of course because of the play, he's going to get stabbed to death at some point. And gosh, can you imagine doing that these days? People will go insane, but people did go somewhat insane at the time. So this was sort of a right-wing cause celeb. They were already very upset about this. And then in this case, maybe you can pick it up from here, Jared or Mike, about, sort of how Laura intervenes.
Yeah, I mean, Laura and Jack Posobiec together, a sort of tandem crossover episode, run the jewels of dipshits. They interrupt the play and they start screaming things. They call them Nazis. They say, "You are all Goebbels," right?
Yeah. That's what Jack Posobiec says. Is like,
yes.
You're all. He's trying to say, like Joseph Goebbels, but
he's saying like gerbils.
He's like coming out as gerbils.
Gerbils.
Laura, I think, actually makes it onto the stage, and it's just like
she would. She's got that extra juice.
Violence against Trump supporters. The blood is on you.
Utilization of political violence against the right. This is unacceptable. You cannot get off the stage.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pause. Security.
This is violence.
Security, please.
Goebbels!
You are all Nazis like Joseph Goebbels. This is Goebbels. You are all.
The stunt gets picked up. It lands her in an appearance on Sean Hannity's show on Fox News. I mean, she really gets a lot of attention from this and quite a bit of money. You know, it doesn't seem like much in the scale of things today, but I imagine at that point in her career, it was quite a bit. She is profiled in The New Yorker in a piece that is actually really good. So she gets 20,000 new Twitter followers and $10,000 in donations for a legal defense fund. But with this, Mike, maybe you could talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, I'm going to go into it a little bit deeper in a bit, but I just want to just quickly say that because Laura is Jewish and outspoken Jewish and overlaps heavily with the alt-right movement, which was not always anti-Semitic, but frequently anti-Semitic, right? I think that's the important distinction, is that it overlapped heavily with a lot of pro-Trump people that were pro-Israel who wanted very racist things to happen to immigrants, but were pro-Israel. But there was a lot of vehemently anti-Semitic people, and maybe the core of that movement was that, as highlighted by the people who marched around in Charlottesville yelling, "Jews will not replace us." So these people did not like Laura in their company. And Laura was very attracted to whatever was very edgy, it seemed like. She seemed to be wanting to be in the mix with the people who were at the real vanguard of the alt-right. And because she was close to them, that made her a target for anti-Semitic harassment.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously an issue that Laura is going to face throughout, including once she starts hanging out with people like Nick Fuentes. Is that, you know, and this is in particular, we're talking about this period right before Charlottesville, when there was a lot more, I would say, intermixing than there would be in a few years later between like hardcore Nazis and these people who were, you know, what we might call the alt-right, and then would later be called the alt, you know, versus the alt-light, people who were, you know, writing for Breitbart, maybe less extreme. And so Laura, you know, as both a woman and a Jewish woman, is going to encounter a lot of issues where she's trying to hang out with these people, and they are not exactly, aren't thrilled to have her support.
Laura makes headlines again in July. So there had been a book party for Milo Yiannopoulos, who we've talked about a few times on this show. Former Breitbart editor, did a lot of legwork in mainstreaming the alt-right. Just very intentional, provocateur, that sort of thing. So there's a book party in New York City. Some people from the book party go to a bar afterward, and they're wearing their MAGA hats, and reportedly this starts a pretty heated argument inside the bar that devolves into a brawl. Giovanni Val, also known as Jovi Val, who would end up going on to hang out with some really hardcore neo-Nazis, and I mean like cross-burning neo-Nazis. Like, what a strange story, strange arc he had. But Jovi and Laura are involved in this brawl, end up getting roughed up. Jovi much more than Laura, getting his face busted up, needing stitches on his face. And Laura, again, gets some publicity by launching a fundraiser for her friend Jovi.
Jovi, I should point out, looks like the fourth Trailer Park Boy. If you ever see him, he is really like an absolutely comical vision to just lay your eyes on. I haven't seen him around recently, but he used to be, as a New Yorker, you'd become familiar that he would be at every single, MAGA protest. He would be right in the middle of it, trying to get busy with Antifa, getting stuff dumped on him, etc.
This is a truly unique time in sort of New York conservatism, which obviously we would see, reborn in a couple different ways. But, this is like when, Milo and Laura and Lucian Wintrich had the art gallery thing with the bathtub full of pig's blood. The aesthetics were not good, folks. And Jovi Val was a unique, this will be, your deep dive episode 1000, because he's not a particularly relevant character. character. But I do think he's certainly an interesting one. But this is who Laura's hanging out with, and you can see, as we will see, a lot of these people kind of fall to the wayside. Who talks about the rebel media anymore? But and people like Faith Goldie, Lauren Southern. But we're going to see Laura has, she goes beast mode. She's not going to give up, and so she will continue to grow and grow.
August is a pretty active month for Laura. There's a few points here in the timeline. So something happens in August. This, alt-right vanguard that Laura's hanging around tries to put on another rally in Charlottesville that goes terribly wrong. Horrifies the world. People die. It's not good. So the, what some people would call the alt-right, I always thought that was a stupid term, but, the sort of MAGA influencers who are like, well, Trump's in power. This is my ticket here. I can't be associated with this, are scrambling to try to be like, well, we hate these people too. These people are not what we're about. And Laura Loomer makes a big stink about, she says, getting a chat room associated with the neo-Nazi blog, The Daily Stormer, shut down. And there is a awesome Gateway Pundit headline that I'm going to read slowly because I think it really kind of tells you what the play is here. So, from my boy Jim Hoft, Gateway Pundit, conservative, Jewish, female, journalist, Laura Loomer gets Daily Stormer chat room all out. So, 4 adjectives before her name. Listen, folks. She's conservative, and she's Jewish, and she's female, and she's a journalist, and she doesn't like these Nazis. So it's very much like nothing to see over here, guys. Trust me. Nothing weird's been happening at the Gateway Pundit. And also her claim of like being responsible for this Daily Stormer chat room getting shut down. I have no idea how true that may or may not be. After Unite the Right, a lot of tech companies were scrambling to figure out like how they could just get the hell away from that movement as fast as possible. But yeah.
So August, there's this tire slashing incident, which I don't remember much about.
Oh my gosh.
Will?
Okay. Yeah. So as soon as I opened up the planning document for this episode, I Control F'd for tire, and I was shocked to find that it was not in here. And so I'm so glad you guys had me on, because it would have been truly irresponsible not to mention this. So yeah, so basically this is in some ways sort of like a Laura Loomer mainstream moment. Like this is when she becomes gets a little bit of like kind of like non-politics people laughing about her. But like she posts a picture. This is again, there's a lot of talk about like what's Antifa doing, the Jovi Val incident. There's this sense that like Antifa is out to get these right-wing personalities. And so she posts on Twitter that she had a flat tire, and she posts, oh my goodness, Antifa slashed my tire. And then people are saying, I don't know, Laura, I don't know if you really rate the Antifa slashing squad's attention. And then they start pointing out that, in fact, if you looked at the picture, it looks more like her tire had dry rot. So, she hadn't been taking care.
I remember this now. Oh my God. It's like
she hadn't been taking emerged
from the back of my brain.
It's the most like deteriorated tire you could imagine. and it's flat. And so she's like, and even Republicans were saying, I don't know, that looks like dry rot to me. And then she, on Twitter, she posts the immortal line. Basically, she says, I'm so sick of these other right-wing media figures. And that actually is important. I mean, that's something we'll see over and over, is how she's so sick of everyone on her side ideologically. And then she says the phrase, they won't defend me and my tire. And that was what it was all about, was that they had, they disrespected her tire.
Not getting my wheels aligned for 6 years, and look what Antifa did to my tire.
Yeah, so people who are listening to this might feel like we're ragging on Laura a lot, but I just want to make clear the official stance of the Posting Through a Podcast is that we do stand with Laura's tire, not with her, but
I've had dry rot. It's really annoying in your tires. Yeah,
dude, getting a tire change is so expensive. It's like it always costs more than you think it's going to. It's a tire. How much could it be? And it's like $200, and you're like, "What are you? This is rubber, right? What are you?" So, we stand with tires on this show. Laura is still under consideration. So, also in August, 3 months after joining Rebel Media, she leaves. And she explains it this way. There were disagreements over how I could use my social media, and I just couldn't approve of that. I wasn't willing to, not tweet about anything besides Rebel stories because essentially then I wouldn't be able to use my voice. So, what it sounds like to me, and I'm, reading into this a little bit, is that Laura is humiliating herself online, and Rebel Media is like, you work for us, right? Can you just post some more of our videos or some articles instead of your tire? And Laura just could not, had to draw an ethical line, and be like, no, I have to maintain editorial independence on my Twitter feed.
Ezra Levant is a funny guy, the guy who's runs Rebel Media, because he sort of seeded a lot of these characters, but also he discovered that it's really hard to run a website full of famously abrasive right-wing media personalities, people again, Lauren Southern, Jack Posobiec, I believe Faith Goldie at one point. Yep. And so all of these people then are just, in fairness, he sounds like a bit of a tyrant, but they all then come to just be the notorious scumbag Ezra Levant, and they all have really bad breakups with him.
Yeah.
You lie down with dogs, you get fleas, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to talk about the infamous video.
The pickup line heard round the world.
Big tits and an Ashkenazi IQ. Who's going to cover that one? Do you want me to introduce who Mike Ma is? Do you want me to talk about Mike Ma? Mike Ma was this guy, or is this guy? He's still around. He was kind of, he's got blonde hair. He'd contributed a bit to Breitbart, if I recall, and definitely edged closer to the more hard edge of the alt-right, certainly than Laura did, probably at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of into sort of this eco-fascism. He's sort of or at least eco-fascism light. That's kind of his brand and what he writes about. And he's got a lot of pseudo-intellectual things that he's published, poetry, music, whatever else.
Yeah, it's like the Daily Stormer is hardcore. You just want to read Andrew Anglin scream about Jews and use the N-word 300 times in a 500-word blog post. Whereas Mike Ma is sort of the same tradition, but sort of pseudo-intellectual, it's almost like...
He's pretentious. He's one of the most pretentious people who have come across. He thinks he's some kind of deep philosopher.
It's kind of that, and then it's also, it just reminds me of Tumblr blogger teenager. Right? Doing a performance of being deep and being obtuse and vague and as if it's somebody...
He's a performative male, as we say now.
Yeah.
Well, he was in a bar with Laura, and Laura appears on the video to be intoxicated. I have no evidence of that, but that's just my read of it. If Laura disagrees with that, she can call up and give us we'll make an update in the next podcast. But
for her sake, I hope she was intoxicated. This clip is much more embarrassing if she's sober.
Can you run the clip, Jared?
Your eyes look so good. You're beautiful.
Thank you.
You're an Aryan degenerate goddess.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you. You're Aryan too.
I know, but I'm Jewish.
It's okay.
The Nazis hate me.
It's fine.
The alt-right people want to put me in a gas chamber because they're obsessed with the Jews.
I think they're just memeing on you, but it's okay.
They're just jealous because I have big tits and an Ashkenazi IQ.
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah. You got it.
I'm going to tell you a secret. So many people in this movement who preach sad life are fucking people on the side and cheating on their partners.
That's so bad.
They're not even
So big tits, Ashkenazi IQ. That's your
this,
pickup line to a white supremacist.
And the other thing to foreground here is that Mike Ma is a tall blonde guy. He looks like a Nazi stormtrooper or something. And you have Laura just sort of throwing herself at him. And when I first saw this video back in the day, I was like, this has to be fake. It's such a dark room that I was like, this can't be Laura Loomer, because it is such a It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for a public figure to have this video follow you around, and it has really kind of followed her around for years and years. And in part because it does hit this kind of crux of her problem, which is she wants to be part of this really far right movement that hates Jews and hates women, and yet she's kind of like just trying to fit in with the guys.
So that clip is, in my eyes, undeniably hilarious. It is just so funny and embarrassing. I mean, what a pickup line. But there's also kind of a darker side of this that is coming up around this time. Will, you have something in our doc here about Gavin Wax, who would go on to lead kind of the big young Republicans club in New York. And I think he works in the Trump administration now. Kind of became a big figure around this time, is still kind of up and coming. But he says something about Laura Loomer sort of around the time of this video of her hitting on Mike Ma. What went on there?
Yeah, so I mean, this was like around the Mike Ma thing, and you have Gavin Wax, who's again one of these kind of right wing New York figures, and he basically says, like, essentially accuses Laura of stalking him, and says, we all know Laura's been stalking me, that she wanted to go on a date, and that she kept calling me up from these different numbers or what have you, and this becomes its own kind of like right wing media story, and so there's this idea that Laura is it is again like in the Mike Ma clip, that she's really desperate to hang out with this crowd.
And I'll just say around this same time, I'm not going to get too into it, but I had been hearing rumors around this time and on a couple occasions in the years that would follow from sources I had in MAGA media land that Laura was also just kind of very aggressively pursuing, sometimes seemingly sexually, some of the figures in the movement, and that it had made some of them pretty uncomfortable. There's other things attached to that, but I also just have to be clear. There was a point where I tried to report out this story. I could not get people on the record. It's embarrassing for them, of course. I mean, there's a lot of reasons people wouldn't want to go on the record about that kind of thing. So I could never land it. So I have to just say that these were rumors I was told and looked into. But some of the stories I heard were pretty gross. I don't know. Just, and again, I'll just have to leave it at that. But it kind of, in a way, I think maybe if there's any truth to them, suggests that maybe Gavin was not alone in getting advances or alleged advances from Laura, as she's, like you said, Will, really trying to like get in with this club and get validation from some of the men in this
She's
space. Thirsty, yeah.
I think that might sum it up.
This year, she also starts getting plastic surgery, starting with a nose job, which is not something we would normally cover for somebody on a Who the Hell Is episode. But we have to mention it because it has become part of Laura's story of how she is antagonized online by her critics on the right and left. Like every Laura Loomer post she makes on Twitter, you can try this at home, folks. Click it, go to the replies. Eventually, you will encounter a post of her face next to Jigsaw from the Saw movies.
You don't know me, but I know you. I want to play a game.
It is just part of like the way critics have gone after her is by noting that, it started with this nose job, but over the years she would just get more and more and more plastic surgery, it would seem. Will, you wrote in the document, she's so devoted to her work, though, that she gets the cast taken off from a nose job so she can go sneak into a Hillary Clinton event.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I can sense the awkwardness in the Riverside here, but I'll note that, I mean, this is a major part of the Laura Loomer story, and I think part of her online profile is because of the plastic surgery and because of her perhaps shifting appearance at times, and so the key part, I believe in her memoir she talks about when she's working for James O'Keefe. She says, I got a nose job, and then they said, keep these bandages on, but she was like, she she's traversing the country, infiltrating different Hillary Clinton events, and like constantly dyeing her hair. Her hair gets really fried because she's constantly dyeing it. So there's another kind of like changing appearance aspect and sort of a motif. And then it was like one battle after another. She's like kind of going to, she has many aliases, and then at one point they're like, okay, you got to keep the cast on for let's say a week, and she's like, but there's a Hillary Clinton event in 4 days. And they're like, don't do it, Laura, and she like rips it off because she's like, I can't just infiltrate. They're going to recognize me if everywhere I go I'm wearing a nose cast.
A little sad, but also I think revealing of how aggressively she focuses on her appearance, the way people the way people perceive her in the public. I mean, she's really, really obsessed with it. Around this time, she gets banned from Twitter.
No. She's not banned from Twitter yet. What Twitter does after getting a bunch of flack is they take a look at who's got the blue check marks, and they start taking blue check marks away from some people.
So she was in a crowd that included Richard Spencer, I believe. There was like 3 or 4 primary people, and she was one of them that they stripped the check from. And then for a while, it became part of her identity. That's right. Thank you, Jared. It became part of her identity that she wanted her check mark back.
Yeah, and this had happened after there was like a terror attack in New York City, and she went on this like, crazy rant about Muslim Uber and Lyft drivers. Truly unhinged stuff. So that happened like shortly before this, right? So she loses the blue check mark, and I want to just read a couple things that Laura posted after losing her blue check mark. And when I read this, I want to stress she would get banned from Twitter later, but she's still on Twitter. She still has all her followers. She just does not have the coveted little blue check mark next to her name. She says this: let's see, using badge politics, censoring those who don't worship Twitter's liberal dictator, and implementing procedures to annihilate conservatives from the internet sounds like Twitter is carrying out its own final solution for conservatives. She's comparing it to the Holocaust, if that's not clear to people. There's another one she posted that said, and so it begins. Twitter is quick to call me and others Nazis, but they are literally trying to eradicate my presence, just like Hitler.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at least she kept it in perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, it is funny to imagine that, like the world where number one, Twitter would just be carefully like, you've been a little naughty. We're not going to ban you, but we are going to take away your check mark. And then also, like, I do remember this would drive Laura, and there were a couple other people who would lose their check marks over time. This would drive them absolutely insane. and they were, it's this little tap on the wrist that they did not like.
So it's November, around November. It's the fall of 2017. And it's right around this time of year. And I believe, Will, you were at Daily Beast. Jared, you're doing Right Wing Watch. I was at Newsweek. And we all remember the Vegas shooting, which Stephen Paddock, who's like a 68-year-old man, he's an older guy, horrible situation, unleashed just a storm of bullets on people down below from his hotel room at a country music show. I guess it was a country music festival or a show. Mm-hmm. And 61 people died. I think there's like 800 something injuries. Maybe 400 or so of those were from shrapnel or bullets. The rest were all from trampling from the chaos. It was really, really disturbing. One thing about it is most of the victims were white because it was a country music show and those are the demographics. And right away on the right, a lot of different outlets on the right, including InfoWars and whatever, tried to make it out as if this were Antifa. Now, we covered the Antifa stuff with Chris Mathias on an episode a couple weeks back. I recommend everybody go back and listen to that. I think we mentioned the Vegas shooting as one of the disinfo things around Antifa. But Laura Loomer became the ultimate Las Vegas shooting truther, I believe. I mean, she really would not let the story go. She decided that there was definitely something there, and I think she traveled to Las Vegas. I mean, there was a lot of.
I was going to say she took it a step further, right? Which is again something that's going to keep coming up. A theme about Laura is where a lot of people will post and write stories and stuff. Laura will take stories or take narratives and force them into reality by actually traveling to go do things and filming herself, filming the people targeted by them. And she goes to Las Vegas and is, heckling the police department. And her big thing is that there's some kind of cover up happening regarding this shooting. There's something that the police aren't telling us. Will, do you remember much about this? I feel like I vaguely remember, where a lot of right-wing media, like Mike said, the InfoWars of the world, were trying to say that this was Antifa somehow. Laura shows up and starts taking another track by trying to claim that this 68-year-old man who committed this atrocity was somehow like Muslim Brotherhood. Or something.
So Laura's angle, she's kind of drawing from her old well here and saying, this was ISIS, or this guy was somehow mixed up with the Saudis. I mean, either way, she's saying it's a Muslim thing. I think you're right that Muslim Brotherhood was involved. And the thing I would add here is she does so well with this that one of the local Las Vegas TV stations wants to hire her as a reporter, and the general manager, this kind of embattled general manager, is like, I'm gonna, forget these regular reporters. I'm gonna bring in Laura. And I think it was like a kind of a TV industry trade publication was like, Laura's in talks to join this Las Vegas local station as like a staff reporter, and then like the staff just rioted. And cost her this job. And in her memoir, she talks about just like they weren't ready for my truth about the ISIS plot.
Yeah, they weren't ready for it. Yeah, it's like when rappers have like an album listening party and they're like, y'all ain't ready for this. People said my album sucked, but the world's just not ready for it yet.
I'd like to emphasize also to the audience that his name is Stephen Paddock, and he's a 6-year-old white guy. I mean, that doesn't mean he can't be working for the Saudis. Of course he could, in theory. But I mean, there was no evidence to support that this guy was anything other than maniacal and disturbed.
Yeah, I mean, Laura's whole tactic there, and it would be a tactic that she, continues to use, is to just say, it was this. And then when people are like, you have no evidence of that, there's nothing that suggests it would do that, she'd be like, well, prove it. And when people are like, how do I prove it was not something? And
that's when she disappears like Tim Robinson in the hot dog costume.
Yeah. Well, Mike, it's around this time, you actually have a personal story about Laura Loomer.
Yeah, so I feel like, at this time, with what we were all covering, I was generally covering at Newsweek what I describe, I guess, the harder edge of the MAGA movement, like the one that overlapped more with, explicit neo-Nazi material. I was covering that really closely at the time. Of course, this all overlapped because they were all in the same soup. But when I went there, I was really focused, I've mentioned on other episodes, on tracking down some of the people who helped create that chaos in Charlottesville, who may not have driven the car that James Alex Fields did, but helped stir the environment in such a way. And obviously, I was really focused for that reason on Daily Stormer, because they were really, really responsible for sending a message that people should embrace violence at that event. And so I was looking for stories about Daily Storm. I was looking for ways I could, impact them. I really wanted to, nothing beyond the truth, but with an activist bent of just, trying to expose this website, how it worked, what was going on. And Laura Loomer saw me doing that and connected with me because she was very interested in Daily Stormer as well. And she told me to meet her as a source at a talk for Pam Geller, who we spoke about recently. And I went to this event. That's the first time I ever met Chris Mathias. And I was sitting there with Laura Loomer, as Pam Geller gave her talk, and he's like, "Hey, you're Mike Hayden from online." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Hey, man, is that Laura Loomer with you?" And I was like, "Yes, it is." I don't think I came into this later for you. I was doing like more general news at ABC before I came to, I was picking up the beat as it went along. I didn't realize exactly that her full history. I knew that she was a little, had a reputation. And so I was waiting for her to finish a very diva thing. She was waiting for Pam Geller to conference with her and all this. I was waiting. And then she's like, "Okay, let's talk. Come and take a cab ride with me." And I said, "Okay." And so I get in the cab, the first cab, and she didn't like the cab driver. And she said something about him that was not very polite. And of course, I'm, mixed Arab. And so I was like, does that have a thing to it? I was just, let me ride this out. I didn't want to interrogate the way she talked about him. Get into the next cab. We take a cab ride down. She's absolutely sweet as apple pie. Very nice. And she really did give me a lot of information about Daily Stormer. I mean, like really, really useful information that she had gathered herself and sat on for me to follow. Reporting that later turned into, or material that later turned into reporting that did have a really negative impact on Daily Stormer, really impacted Andrew Weave Ornheimer in particular. She stressed to me that Weave was Jewish. And I was like, no, he has a swastika tattooed on his chest. But later, his mother told me that he had Jewish heritage on both sides of his family. At any rate, we're in the car, we're talking so friendly, and she's like, we need to talk some more, blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, "Unfortunately, I have to leave. I got to go Loomer Hillary Clinton." And she just gets out of the cab. So,
did she say that? I have to go Loomer Hillary
yeah,
Clinton?
that's what she said. So,
of course. Don't let me stop you.
And so, I had to say, I found it very charming, even though I understood her to be really toxic. You get a different taste of these people when you get to meet them, and it's always nice when someone isn't like, constantly trying to, make fun of you in subtle ways or try to like get under your skin. She was very friendly while she was giving me the information. And then she's like, come, I'm going to go Loomer Linder Sarsour, who is a pro-Palestinian activist. And like, immediately I was like, I was like, okay, because this like is really going to go against everything in my soul. But like, I'm like, okay, well, if there's more information, I'll go. And she was creating a mess outside of that event the whole time. She was, I can't remember if she had an Israel flag with her or somebody in her, in the counter protester or the protesters there had that. And at that event, she told me in a very personal way that how badly she had been harassed by white nationalists. And she mentioned like all this like very, graphic, horrific, I think bordering on, bordering on like sexual stalking even, but it was like with a really negative, mean thing. And I actually really felt for her when she was telling me about it. And one person she mentioned in particular who had like repeatedly called her and harassed her was Millennial Matt. Does anybody remember that guy?
Yes, absolutely.
Matt Colligan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matt Colligan was a guy from Boston who ended up showing up at the Charlottesville event. He went out to Idaho. There are people who have insinuated later that he's a federal informant. I don't know. I don't know wherever Millennial Matt is. He sort of disappeared after those rumors. But, I started to feel bad for her. And I actually, on her behalf, like, just to kind of look into it, some of the things that had happened, called Millennial Matt, and he was so defensive and angry and all these things. And I will tell you, like, very naively, I was like, it doesn't matter what Laura Loomer is and has done or what she represents. I mean, she's a human being. Like, this abuse is like horrific. And she mentioned also that there was like this contest about who could put her in gas chambers and like whatever. And they were bombarding her with pictures of that. I just mentioned that not to, humanize her like, in an over the top way, but in a way that I say that when I heard about that stuff, I genuinely felt something for her because it sounded like she had really, really gone through it. And that we can talk about it later, but our friendly relationship didn't last long because of the Gorilla Mike situation.
Now we're in 2018. The Gorilla Mike situation. This so we I don't even know where to start with this one. But it all revolved around a blog post published by Bernard Media, which was a sort of quasi-informative, half informative, half satirical, 100% trolling,
I think it's important to point out that Nathan was really good friends with Vic Berger, who currently does the soundboard for Tim Heidecker and his podcast, and was a absolutely cutthroat video editor, made works of art with Trump speeches and everything else.
Yeah, so Bernard Media posts a story alleging that they're investigating the potential existence of a sex tape between Laura Loomer and Mike Cernovich. And to explain what this was, we actually talked to Nathan Bernard. He'll come back later, but here's a clip from our interview with him.
All right, Nathan, we know you very well. And we spent a lot of time talking for years, still do. And just let everybody know kind of where you were during the first Trump administration in terms of the far right and what you were doing.
I guess I had started following a couple of figures in the far right, primarily Weird Mike Cernovich, Baked Alaska, now of January 6th fame. So I'd started following some of the figures in that orbit, which, kind of overlapped with some comedy stuff that I'm a big fan of Tim and Eric and Vic Berger. They had kind of started wading into some of this as well, which kind of pulled my interest in that direction. And a lot of these people were starting to do live streams that we were clipping for comedic reasons. They were getting pretty active online.
They were popping off, dude. I spilt my guts laughing over so many of those. It was such a huge release for me in those years of just like, I have to write a serious story about Mike Cernovich, and then I can also watch him be like, Gorilla Mind,
Yep. They, I think actually, Jared, we met, I want to say, because of Milk Leaks, which was the archive website for Baked Alaska's just ridiculous cell phones. So I think that's how we initially got in contact. Cernovich Leaks, Milk Leaks, which kind of became these archive websites of these people just absolutely destroying themselves. Just a lot of cringe. But yeah, that kind of morphed into Bernard Media, which was a more active, maybe aggressive attack on the far right with using a bit of comedy, still turning their words on them, but ended up getting some monster scoops. BM is what we would call it.
There's some monster BMs that came out the chute there. And
they were stored up for a while, and they started coming pretty regularly. Actually, we got to a pretty regular point with the BM scoops.
That's good. I mean, you can't have too many BMs backed up. It's just, you start to feel like sick and anxious. You have to get that out.
You need regularity for health. Like if you had regular BM scoops, I felt like things were healing when that was happening.
So there were these things that I think were like sort of a cross between journalism and comedy, I guess is the best way for people to understand them. And Laura Loomer became more and more of an interest because she was one of the preeminent influencers of that era, and she remains incredibly powerful and popular.
Yeah, those early years, she was coming up. She was rising fast. And as we've talked about on this episode already, it's clear from the go she's insane, and she'll believe anything and say anything and completely debase herself in a way that other influencers, like part of why it was funny to make fun of Mike Cernovich is he took himself so seriously. But Laura just would go, it was like, no, there was nothing she would not do to just go for it.
Yeah. She came into the orbit through Cernovich, and absolutely, she fancies herself an investigative journalist. So in some ways, she took herself seriously, not to the level of Cernovich, but she was willing, and still is. She's eating dog food now, so at least that's one of the last times that I've checked.
We're still
in on
getting
her.
to that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, she's quite readily willing to debase herself in any way possible, still to get clicks and get attention. And she's certainly got Trump's attention. She gives him national security advice or whatever she does now. But she had kind of fallen into the crosshairs via Cernovich for Bernard Media. And we had all, I feel like all three of us, had kind of covered her and looked at her rise, and people had, seen her get banned from Uber Eats or whatever. I got a big scoop for Bernard Media. One of my first real big scoops that I kept stored up and then just splattered, let it all out on the world. It made a wave.
Well, what exactly did you do? What was the nature of, I guess, the prank?
So the big scoop was I had heard allegedly through a credible source that there could be in the world, allegedly, a sex tape between Mike Cernovich and Laura Loomer. And so I investigated the existence of this sex tape. And as things progressed, I got in touch with Laura. She blew her fuse. I got in touch with Cernovich. His lawyer said if he had made a sex tape, it was likely quite old material, but didn't deny the existence of the potential tape. And that was Mark Randazza. You guys know him?
Damn, what a response, man.
Yeah. I don't know if that was a big part of the article. But so Randazza didn't deny it. He just said, hey, something might be out there, but it would be old if it was. Yes, so that went all over the internet. That was my first time talking to Laura and DMing with her, which just went off the rails real quick. She said she was going to sue me for defamation, sexual harassment, that she was going to have me eating out of a dumpster in New York City where I lived at the time for the rest of my life. So some quite flavored language that she tossed at me. And I guess about a year later, BM, that scoop had become old history and just lore on the internet, essentially. It just kind of faded away into the ether of the internet. And I had gotten a profile in Rolling Stone kind of talking about the tactics of BM and milk leaks and Cernovich leaks, and is fighting fire with fire really a good thing, which I think now I should get a hat that says BM was right about everything or something. I think it's proved itself out, right, in some ways that was an effective tactic and probably still is. Years later, after that Rolling Stone piece runs, Laura threw a fit about it because it mentioned the tape in that story. She threatened to sue Rolling Stone and many different outlets, and eventually got the piece pulled. Rolling Stone didn't want to deal with it, and they pulled my profile from Rolling Stone. So my free speech, the rug was pulled right out from under me. So yes, that's a little bit about like my first kind of interactions with Laura and everything.
Censored for alleged rumors.
Censored for alleged investigation into the truth. What can you do? Censored for truth.
So Laura got like incensed. Mike Cernovich did too. I remember Mike Cernovich was like trying to call for the Daily Beast to fire you?
I was at the Hill at the time. I mean, the Daily Beast would have fed that letter right into the shredder. But Mike hired Mark Randazza, who's like a famous, infamous maybe right-wing lawyer, and I just got called into like the HR office. This is so. All I did, I tweeted Mike Cernovich's lawyer says that no sex tape. Whatever. Fair enough. It was true. And then
also as Nathan just described, the statement that Mark Randazza gave Nathan was like, if a sex tape does exist, it's probably very old. It's so bizarre.
Like, I just quoted whatever that statement was, and then just by tweeting it, and then they sent a cease and desist to the Hill, and the Hill was like, they had no stomach for this, and they were just like, look at I'm called in, and I see Randazza on this letterhead, and I was like, what? And then they sort of slide this picture over of like this blog post. I go, uh-oh, and the rich guy who owned the Hill was not happy with me, and they thought, they didn't really understand the internet. They thought I had written the blog, like that I was Nathan Bernard or something, but I skated on that one. But yes, everyone got in trouble, over that saga.
Yeah. So Mike Cernovich, kind of a male supremacist, like a men's rights activist who had flirted with some of the alt-right stuff as well. Really unusual figure in some ways, kind of unhinged in his own right. I remember very much trying to chase the lead about whether this sex tape existed for Newsweek. And I remember specifically texting Laura, whatever's like, I don't want to get beat by Will Sommer. That's why I'm asking. So Laura is like, gets on the phone with me, and she is in the interim between the last time I spoke about her and now. She's, we've spoken fairly regularly about certain things. She's just on the phone, just telling me about her thoughts about right-wing media and certain things. And, just like with any other person I would talk to at that time, I would give her a lot of time. And again, super friendly, remained very friendly with me. I remember many times I'd be like in my kitchen, and all of a sudden, randomly, I get a phone call from Laura Loomer, and I'd pick it up and talk to her. And that changed when I inquired about that. I was like, I don't know anything about it. It may not be real. Then that's fine. Then you just tell me that it's not real. And she was like, if you publish anything about this, I will go on to Twitter and I will say that you did like XYZ horrible thing, and I will make everybody know. And I was like, the implication that I would be like Me Too'd or something. And I was like so shocked. I was so scared too, because she has such a big following. It was like really threatening. I remember being like so scared about it, and like, her tone completely changed. And I kind of saw the side of her personality that probably in some ways has made her so successful, in the sense that, she is, when she wants to be like really cutthroat, she can on a dime find that in herself, because she scared the absolute shit out of me when I asked. And I asked Mike Cernovich about it, and it was different. And he just kept texting me, I've got the Uber receipts. I was like, Mike, okay. I didn't say I just asked because it was a rumor. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't behind on it. So yeah, that's the second round of my story, and why I am really cautious talking to Laura Loomer now. It's just because I know her to be potentially volatile.
So we'll get back, and Nathan will come back in. We'll hear from him again, because he's involved with another sort of point on Laura's career arc. A big thing happens in 2018, which is that Laura Loomer is banned from Twitter, and she's banned for making some pretty pointed anti-Muslim remarks about Ilhan Omar, who is a politician from Minnesota. She goes ballistic.
What are they doing? I want to know what people are actually going to do. My life is ruined. Does anybody understand how ruined my life is? I'm sick of it. I don't want to listen to people tell me that I'm a conspiracy theorist. They don't know what it's like to be me. My life is ruined, Alex.
No, I understand. I just think you need to go.
This feels like so long ago, but I remember the photos she would post of herself with like the duct tape over her mouth that was like, I'm silenced for truth. Yes. I'm silenced for truth.
I think she had a shirt, right? It was kind of like a Twitter blue shirt with her face on it and the duct tape on it.
Twitter is her like her platform. That is her primary thing. I mean, she has like a blog, newsletter, or what she's experimenting
She
with.
had hundreds of thousands of followers as well, which is why I was so scared of her. When she made that threat. I mean, she was really powerful on Twitter. She could really drive engagement.
Yeah, and especially at this time, Twitter is the heart monitor that a lot of reporters are using too. So this is like how she's getting attention, how she's getting pickup on stories and that sort of thing. So this is just really, really throws her for a loop. And she does something that has gone down in history as one of, I think, the most insane things that has ever.
It's impressive. It's like sometimes you got to tip your hat to some of these people, and you just be like, "All right, that's wild." Okay.
So Laura goes to the Twitter headquarters, the big Twitter office in New York City to protest her ban. She handcuffs herself or ties herself to the door there. She's wearing a armband, the same kind of armband that Nazis put on Jewish people, and has a megaphone and is hooting and hollering, doing something she already did when she lost her blue check mark, which is comparing her ban to the Holocaust, claiming that they're doing this because she's Jewish and so on. Which I'll say, like, Laura brings up her Jewishness a lot for somebody who describes himself, or at least at some point described himself as an atheist Jewish person. I'll leave that there. Will take us there.
Yeah, I think you had a good point here, which is that this is one of the craziest things to happen. The Trump era hasn't been so great for our country, but it has given us certain very evocative moments, and this is one of them. I mean, I think we have to lay the groundwork here. I mean, and you hit on a lot of this, Jared, but the economics of being Laura Loomer and the sort of the whole point of being Laura Loomer is that you have to get attention, and you have to get more and more attention constantly, and how much is that attention going to cost you? And so when you're on Twitter, it's very easy because you can tweet, Muslims shouldn't be allowed to drive Ubers. And people go, what? And you can have a cycle. All you have to do is send a tweet. But when you're off of Twitter, it particularly, back in 2018, you had to, you have to start doing stunts. And so now we're entering the stunt era. And that is increasingly, not only does it have an expense, so she has to fly somewhere or whatever, but it's also, a lot of times it's very off-putting even to people on the right. It's very bizarre appearing. I mean, I remember when I think she was banned from Twitter like right around Thanksgiving. And I was on a train to go have Thanksgiving with my in-laws. I was just on this Amtrak, and then she called me and was just like, right after she was banned. And she was screaming at me. So,
do you think you were the first person she called?
I think I had just texted her because I was just like, "Whoa, just saw you were banned from Twitter."
Okay.
And then I was just like,
because for a moment I was thinking like something horrible in her life has happened, and she's like, I have to talk to Will.
I need Will to talk me off the ledge.
Will, where are you?
So she handcuffs herself to the door of this Twitter office building in New York, and I think it was either she wasn't banned from Periscope, weirdly enough, which was part of Twitter, or she had a crony with her. I think Dr. Jane Ruby, who's sort of a sometimes Loomer associate, was there to film it. And again, this was one of these things where she kind of announced she was going to do it like 30 minutes beforehand. And so I was just like locked in. I couldn't believe it. And then so she did it. And the crazy thing was it was like kind of like the police made clear to her, we don't care that much as long as you don't block access to the building. So she only handcuffs herself to one door. So people are just kind of walking in and out. And this obviously becomes, this drags on for hours. And I think, it's basically resolved more or less peacefully, but she revealed something interesting, I think, in her memoir, which is like there's kind of like a scuffle. There were like some people trying to stop her from locking up the door, and her assistant who was there gets his pinky chopped off in the door.
Oh my God.
Blood spraying.
Dude, imagine not having a full pinky for the rest of your life, and you're explaining what happened. Somebody's like, hey, what, you meet the partner of your dreams, and they're like, hey, what happened to your pinky? And you're like, well, Laura Loomer had handcuffed herself to the headquarters of Twitter. and I got my finger stuck in whatever fucking door or whatever happened and it chopped my pinky off.
Yeah, I feel like what I sort of remember is I think that Laura was like really hoping that somebody from the company would come down and talk to her, but like the people that were in the office, one, it was at night, so like presumably most of the people that show up to work at the Twitter office are like at home having dinner or something. So, and the people that are there are seem to just be like,
it was New York, though.
Yeah, it was like, whatever. Just
it was New
York.
Let her
go. She'll leave eventually.
It's New York, right? So Jack Dorsey's not there. I mean, that's not.
It's not the main Twitter building.
Yeah, it's
We keep saying headquarters because like right-wing media is saying headquarters, but this is like a satellite office.
I think that's an important distinction.
One, but yeah,
she's in New York. I mean, Jack Dorsey is probably in that office, in and out of that office, maybe like once a year, probably for some sort of thing where he's in New York. Can't imagine that. I think one thing that you're missing though is that Laura's, her trade really was about those trending topics on Twitter. It's not just that she wanted to have her Twitter account. She wanted to trend. She wanted to trend, and Loomering was a way to get her to trend. And she would frequently succeed by these stunts, and so would Jack Posobiec. Like some of the stunts that he would do would get up there, and people would start talking about it. And right, for instance, when Jack did the like rape Melania sign, that would trend at the top of Twitter. And one way to guarantee that you're going to trend on Twitter is if Laura Loomer herself handcuffs herself to the door of Twitter, and sure enough, she succeeded. She's like, this is, one more way to get in. And I think that became her mindset. It's like, how do I keep the trending topics, around me and my actions?
That doesn't matter. What matters is our free speech, right? We need to protect our right to free speech. Facebook and Twitter are now the digital public squares. Everything takes place on Facebook and Twitter. And to just decide one day that you're going to ban an entire group of people from the internet because you don't like their opinion, that's egregious.
So after she's banned from Twitter, I mean, Laura is mad, but it's like the stages of grief, right? It's she gets through the anger phase and then just gets very, very down about it. There's a quote here that you put in the doc, Will. Where does this quote come from?
I got this. I was working on a profile of Laura Loomer at the Post and the Washington Post, and basically a friend of mine of hers sent me a text she had sent, kind of reflecting on the Twitter ban, and she describes her life as a never-ending funeral in the aftermath of the ban, and which is like pretty grim stuff. I mean, she does. I'm continuously grieving the loss of my potential, a lingering cloud of what if questions. I mean, so she's talking about like really like basically my life is like, could you, if a friend of yours said my life is a never-ending funeral, you'd be like, oh boy, we got to intervene here.
Yeah, you want to come over? Like it's
this is like the Joy Division song "Day of the Lords," where it's like, where will it end? Where will it end? Sorry.
And so she enters this universe where she has to like kind of keep generating this Twitter level attention, but often with diminishing returns.
So one way she does this, and I can't remember if this is actually before or after she's banned from Twitter, but there's a hearing on Capitol Hill with Jack Dorsey, some other tech CEOs, and she tries to interrupt it, hooting and hollering about Twitter censorship, supposedly. And this kind of got attention because one of the people, one of the politicians leading this hearing, I guess the story is he is like a former auctioneer.
Yeah, it was Congressman Billy Long, who just recently was the Trump commissioner of the IRS and basically got pushed out because he like wasn't quite willing to be as vicious as they wanted. But at the time, he was a Republican congressman, and he was also an auctioneer. And so he starts going like 1 to 50, 50. Oh, well, there we go to the gentleman as the security is taking her out. And then Laura would later claim that he was auctioning her off which was not exactly what was
Yeah.
happening. Anyone want this young lady? Like, that was not what was going on.
This is so good. I've got to play a clip. Here it
I
is.
can't understand it. What?
Steal the election. That is why
What
he
she-
is censoring and shadow banning.
How about it in? 12 and a half, 15, 7 and a half, $20, 2 and a half, 5, 7 and a half, 30, 2 and a quarter. It 2 and a half, 75, 3, able to bomb 300. It 3 and a quarter. Cut 3 and a quarter now, half, 3 and a half, 75, 400.
So Laura's continuing to show up, right? She doesn't have Twitter. She has to. The cost of this attention she's trying to get is much higher. She gets thrown out of a court hearing for yelling at the wife of the Pulse nightclub shooter. Something I read. I don't know much about that. I feel like even in my mind, which it has way more, memories about Laura Loomer in it than anybody's brain should. I had still forgotten about that one. Do you know what that was?
No, I don't really. I mean, you can see she's kind of in the wilderness at this point. She's sort of like failing to hit the nail on the head and like get people going. I mean, obviously the chaining herself to Twitter headquarters was like a beautiful bit of performance art. But after that, I think she spent all her inspiration on that.
She's getting thrown out of other events too. There was like a James Comey book event at a Barnes & Noble in New York City. The next thing that happens, in her search for answers, her search for meaning, following her Twitter ban, well, we've got Bernard Media coming in once again. Laura Loomer goes to the press, and the Wall Street Journal even runs her claims and alleges that a Muslim advocacy group was responsible for her Twitter ban. And you may wonder, well, where did she get that? How did she come up with that? Well, folks, Nathan Bernard, who you heard from earlier, he was involved. So here is the second part of our conversation with Nathan.
I guess the next really big kind of interaction that I had with Laura was myself and a friend. We had gotten a hold of Laura's phone number, and this was after she got banned from Twitter and had locked herself to the doors of Twitter, just making a complete mockery of herself. Speaks to what we had said before, will do anything to debase herself to get attention. We get her phone number. She's hot to find out who banned her and who was behind it. We text her saying we're an employee from Twitter, that we have sensitive information. We could get, we could get, these texts are wild also, like the stupidest texts you could ever imagine. There is not much thought going into these. We say, hey, we're, not many people in Twitter agree with our politics. We're conservatives. We love your stuff. We love what you're doing. We want to help you out. We need your account back on Twitter. Keep fighting the good fight. If you're willing to talk to us, reply wire with a Y. And we got a Y text back. So yeah, you may remember that text. But then she thinks she has a through line directly to Dorsey. We've said that we can get into his office, that we have his calendars. We talked to her for weeks. Looking back, it was extensive, right? We made a calendar that had, again, just the dumbest stuff imaginable on it.
I remember you showing it to me at the time, and it was like, I was like, well, this is actually very detailed.
Yeah, it would be like a 2-hour meditation session followed by a meeting with Ben Shapiro.
I love that you remember that. That's what I was gonna. That's exactly what I was gonna say. I love that so much. Yeah, I every morning Jack Dorsey was locked in on his meditation routine for like 2 to 3 hours every morning. He's just carving out the time. And then, like you said, he's just going straight into a meeting with Ben Shapiro. I think we have Will. We actually put Will Sommer, just anyone that, that she's got into a fight with. We just put on the calendars, threw it on there. And one of the people we put on there was a guy from CARE, which was a Muslim rights active advocacy group. And she just locked in on that. Like she had a narrative that she wanted to see through, and we put that in there thinking she could pick up on it, that it would prove something of the sort of how the sausage is made with right-wing media. And she just went bananas, man. After she saw the care guy's name on that, she went to media outlets, including the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah,
which,
I wrote a story about it. I remember it. The Wall Street Journal took Laura's claim that she got from you guys who were pranking her, and the Wall Street Journal kind of just went with it. And then when the Wall Street Journal went with it, right-wing media picked up and hyperfixated on that. And it caused a lot of trouble for CARE, which I know, but I would appreciate kind of hearing your thoughts on that now. Just because I know we've spoken in the past and you've expressed some regret about that. Because on one hand, it does show just how the sausage is made. Laura will just pick up literally anything, and then if you can get anybody to plug it, then all these outlets will come reinforce it, and suddenly you've got your narrative, right? But on the other hand, it went bananas for CARE. I mean, she even sued CARE after I reported out the prank, which is the craziest part to me. She was pranked. I reported it out. It embarrassed her. It embarrassed the Wall Street Journal, and she didn't let it go. She went on and sued the group.
Yeah, I mean, so at the time, there was a bunch of media stories after yours, Jared, that just gave takes on the prank itself. And one of them was a story, I want to say it was in Salon, maybe. And it was by a Muslim man. And the title of the story was something such as The Cruelty of a Viral Prank, or something like that. And I had even in that moment, I had a long multi-day conversation with him, the author of it, apologizing and also just telling him that it was not our intention to create the sort of hardship for CARE that we did. And I couldn't say exactly how I felt at the time. I'm sure I felt guilt for sure, just because of how it turned out. And, that whole Rolling Stone article had differing takes on it as well of, is this tactic of, are you becoming the people that you hate or whatever, or the things that you despise? And stuff like that. I mean, I definitely didn't love that was a way it was received. And I certainly felt guilt by it. I definitely didn't feel good that, it then turned into a lawsuit for CARE. And you had already debunked everything through your story. But to speak to that too, Laura and just everyone in this Trump orbit, that's just the modus operandi is double down, triple down, never accept defeat, never accept you're wrong. Even if there's texts from me coming out, right, saying, look, we pranked you. This was all fake. She's going to double and triple down and take it as far as she can in the courts, which she ultimately did. I mean, I was asked by CARE when she brought the first lawsuit in Florida, suing them for whatever it was, silencing her free speech, defamation, you name it, just throw in the book at them. CARE reached out to me and asked if I would do affidavit sworn under the penalty of perjury. I remember rereading that, just like that was a heavy thing. And yeah, I signed everything, and I put your story, Jared, as my personal statement. Everything in the story is true. I stand by everything that was said. It's a prank. CARE had nothing to do with Laura Loomer's ban from Twitter. This was a created story by myself and my pal. There's no collusion with the Muslim Brotherhood to get her taken off the Bird app. No one's doing that. She, with her lawyer, I want to say it was Larry Klayman at the time.
It's just complete joke of a lawyer.
Yeah, just a complete fool, complete bozo. They, of course, have no grounds for anything in Florida. They lose the case in Florida. They then appeal it to the U.S. district court, the appellate court, the 11th Circuit, which covers, I want to say, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, a bunch of southern states. So it's a step away from the Supreme Court, essentially, which, looking back at that time, absolutely did not understand kind of where this was trending towards. Just me being stupid. I didn't realize the court structure or how close it was to basically taking the case to Kavanaugh or whatever. It's like crazy. But yeah, she lost the appeal, of course, terribly. I can't remember the exact wording in the decision, but it was something along the lines of, this is just a fabrication of Laura's imagination, and there's so much proof pointing otherwise that this is clearly not true, and this is a waste of our time. As a result of that, Laura lost the case, is still due, owes CARE $120,000 was the decision, as well as any attorney fees. And from CARE's perspective, that in their press release for that, they just said, we're happy to get back to focusing on what we should be focusing on, and not having to divert any resources towards this. So I don't know how I feel about it now. I think it's I don't know. It's wild because these people, I didn't expect these people to still be relevant in any way, shape, or form. I didn't expect people to be talking about Laura Loomer sucking off Trump or whatever. Like I thought these things were kind of in the past, right? I thought she would just kind of fade into the horizon and be forgotten about. She'd keep running for Congress or whatever in Florida and trying to grift people. But it's alarming that she's still around. And so looking back, I don't know. I think it speaks to kind of the court system playing out in a positive way. I think there's still hope that you can take things to the courts and have positive results from them. Will CARE ever see that money though? Who knows?
Who knows?
Not.
Yeah, man. Who knows?
Well, I just want to say before we let you go, that having been around and been in chats with you all the time back then and these pranks, I know that your heart was absolutely in the right place all the time. You were fed up with this fascist movement growing in the United States, and you were looking for ways to blow off steam about it. And also, you did a really great job at disarming these people. They were often befuddled by you, Vic Berger, folks like that. And I'm glad that it worked out that way, because I know that like I said, your heart was really in the right place.
I can't say I feel too much differently than I did then. And like I said before, I think I'll get that hat printed out. BM was right about everything, because now there's kind of a shift. At the time, people were not so down with fighting in that sort of way. But I think now people are pressing lawmakers and the media to be more combative and more authentic, and just say your thing, say your piece. Don't be a robot, be a normal person, fight back, do something interesting. So I think, I think it's proved its point now. I think, get that hat printed. Let's do it. Posted PTI merch right there.
PTI BM collab merch, exclusive drop. People wait outside the Supreme store for it. Nathan Bernard, thanks for joining.
All right, buddy. Nice
Thanks
to see you.
me. Yeah, thanks.
Let's get back to who the hell is Laura Loomer.
When I was young, it's not my problem.
Obviously, like the fact that CARE got roped into this, that like of all the things that Nathan and his friend were feeding Laura, she really hyperfixated on CARE is unfortunate. It caused a lot of trouble for that group. But I do kind of think Nathan was successful in proving just how credulous Laura is and how willing she is to say anything that she thinks will be a compelling narrative that boosts, that like validates her claims and also puts her at the center of the story, right?
Well, what I would add to that is now that we know that, because at the time everybody's like, we knew that. We knew the way right wing journalism
you
works.
can feel it, right?
But now we're it's been voted back into power, right? We're under this current MAGA regime, and it is a little disconcerting, But we not couple days ago we had a whole bunch of these influencers talking about the menace of Antifa and stuff like that, and it is a little scary to think that there are people out there who are making life and death decisions for the rest of us based on these influencers who have the same sort of mindset.
Oh, completely. I mean, we saw this a lot in the first Trump administration, and now I think we're seeing it even more, where you can trace back why did Trump say this, whatever, and then it's there was a tweet about it, and then it was completely fake. But yeah, I think you're right on that at the time there were people like Mike Cernovich were claiming, I'm just as good, if not better, than someone at CNN or the New York Times.
So Laura starts to link up with Faith Goldy, who is a white nationalist YouTuber, who also, as we mentioned earlier, did a stint at Rebel News, that Canadian, I don't even want to call it a news outlet. Like, Rebel Media's whole philosophy is that they are participants in the news. So they go out, they provoke people,
it's a
whatever.
Propaganda outfit. I mean,
yeah, through and through. So Faith Goldy tries and fails to win a election in Canada, and it's well known, well documented. I wrote a lot of these stories that Faith Goldy is a white nationalist and just echoes verbatim their talking points about white homelands and the Great Replacement and whatever. But Laura Loomer jumps in and tries to help out Faith, and obviously didn't do much for her. But yeah, you have. I just think this episode was interesting because we start to see the version of Laura who had spent a lot of time trying to figure out what to do about the fact the white nationalist movement was targeting her and harassing her and bullying her, as we've talked about earlier, to kind of posturing herself like behind it, right? Or trying to position herself as within it. She's always, I don't know, she's spent her whole career, even today, I still don't get the sense that she really has consistent feelings about it. It seems like one week she'll defend Nick Fuentes, the next week she'll pivot around and be like, the Groypers are grossly anti-Semitic. And I just don't, I don't know. What's your read?
I think Laura does not have so much of a consistent ideology as she does about, getting attention. And, I think she also wants friends, to be frank, and I think she saw Faith Goldy as potentially a buddy. And she clearly kind of courts these kind of right-wing media alliances, whether it's, it's finding Jack Vasovic to crash Shakespeare in the Park with, or what have you. But yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally, like, there is, of course, this disconnect and this contradiction where she's, again, Jewish, and these people often hate Jews. But I think she's willing to, I mean, I think if I gave her the most credit, I think she's willing to make sort of an alliance of convenience with these people.
She also does something else in 2018. QAnon is popping off, starting to get some real play, get some real attention from media. Shout out to Will Sommer.
This is back when we could have stopped the cabal once and for all. This is when a lot of people were getting awakened.
This is like around the time that you and I, Will, were writing pieces about QAnon, and we'd publish them, and people would like respond to us and be like, "What the fuck's wrong with you? Why are you writing about this? This is the stupidest shit I've ever read." We were right, but too soon. That's but Laura, I don't know that Laura has ever full throat gone QAnon, but I'm including this in here just because I think it again speaks to her willingness to kind of play footsies with anything, or her real interest, her guiding North Star is ensuring that she has as much attention as possible. She criticized reporter who was working at the Daily Caller at the time who said something like QAnon stupid or whatever. And she wrote, "People who follow Q are mostly Trump supporters. Millions of intelligent and everyday people follow Q. These people are conservatives who want answers." And then, like, soon after that, she would also post "Trust the plan," which is QAnon catchphrase. Am I missing anything, Will? I mean, I feel like I don't think Laura ever really went full tilt, but she certainly, kind of seemed to. The argument she's making in these tweets, it seems, is just like, hey, listen, you might not get it, but like, hey, you believe in QAnon? Like, you can be a Loomer fan and believe in QAnon.
Yeah, this is really when QAnon was growing, and there were some other people like this who would sort of, particularly, we have to keep in mind Laura's career is kind of on the back foot at this point, and people who would sort of signal like, I'm cool with QAnon. I think you mentioned the Daily Caller reporter. I think what was happening here, this is sort of briefly kind of a funny backstory, was QAnon supporters really wanted someone to ask Trump about QAnon in a White House press briefing, and so they would say, they would deluge people like Maggie Haberman, all these people. They would say, ask the question. And
I remember you and I would be like, yeah, send us to the White House. I'll ask them about it.
Yeah, sure, I'll do it. And I actually think this might have been Sagar and Jetty when he was still at the Daily Caller. And basically, like, they would ask these particularly right-wing reporters who they saw as sympathetic to them, they would be say, why don't you just ask about QAnon? And these people would understandably be like, I will come off like a lunatic. And so there was this kind of intro, right, clash. And so you see Laura, who doing this thing where she's like, look, I'm more than happy to have QAnon supporters, back me and donate to me. So I'm going to say, look, they're just millions of intelligent people, and they just want answers, parenthesis, left unsaid, about the pedophile dungeon under the pizzeria.
Oh, man. Laura starts working for InfoWars during this year. And one of the assignments she gets for InfoWars is going to the scene of the Parkland school shooting, which is very, very high profile school shooting that happened that year. And like the Sandy Hook shooting, like so many other school shootings, Will, what was the InfoWars angle? What was Laura doing in Parkland?
Yeah, so I mean, this is sort of a classic Laura Loomer moment here, where she's going and kind of asking bizarre questions at the press conference. It's kind of a replay of what she did in Las Vegas. But you're right that this was sort of when Laura, having sort of lost her provocateur's license by being banned from Twitter, is now like, okay, I'm going to get serious now. I'm going to be a real reporter here.
For Alex Jones, yeah.
Yes, well, the home of quality journalism.
I just want to put something for some greater context around this time. So I believe Parkland is like February 2018, and InfoWars starts to face a series of deplatformings right around May. So any kind of shelter she would have gotten from going to an outlet that had reach on social media starts to slip away. I think the InfoWars deplatforming basically goes from May until August, with Twitter being the last to send them off.
Yeah, as you're saying, Will, though, this is where kind of the next era of Loomer comes through. So we have like the undercover Project Veritas Loomer. We have the caps lock Loomered era of Laura Loomer. And this is kind of like the period in her career where she starts experimenting with this idea of branding herself as an investigative reporter. She comes up with another tagline: illuminate the truth. And the middle of illuminate is Loomer. She's illuminating the truth. And she starts a blog. She starts a media company, little LLC by the same name. She launches a website for Illuminate Media, which includes great things like her Twitter stats and a tab called Winter Specials that appeared to link to nothing. I
liked it that she was going to produce so many that there would be a special sort of like Christmas catalog of investigations.
I think what happened is she just used like a WordPress template and just like really half-assed it. It's something else happened in 2018. We took this year out of order a little bit, but there's an incident at the Hoover Dam. Where a guy, you're gonna have to help me remember the details, Will. But
this is
barricades himself in a car.
Where it was a car. Yeah, I mean, basically, this is a case file I'm very familiar with. So basically, this is QAnon was starting to face. Look, I mean, Laura did get a QAnon fan. It worked. So basically, what happens is Laura is trying, or excuse me, this guy. This is a time QAnon is facing sort of a first wave of disappointments. And one of them is that this Inspector General's report is going to come out and blow the lid off of the Democrats' Russia investigation, how unfair it was. And then it comes out and it really fizzles. And so instead, this guy who's a QAnon believer, he takes a sort of like DIY armored truck and he parks it on this bridge across the Hoover Dam between, I guess, Arizona and Nevada or something, or Arizona and California. And he's kind of like aiming an AR-15. He has like some gun holes and he's holding up signs that say like, release the real OIG report, as though that there's a true one that's being held back. So he's ultimately...
There's like B tracks. It's like
yes,
the good shit's in there.
Yeah, the fire stuff. So ultimately, he's arrested, and from prison, he's so mad at his court-appointed lawyer, and he's saying, he's writing these letters to the judge, and he says, "I will not communicate with my lawyer. I will only communicate via Laura Loomer, the famed journalist." So it does appear that the sort of investigative reporter branding is seeking in at least maybe some lower tier demographics.
It worked. I will only. There's one source I trust to tell my story. Pretty eventful year in Loomer's career. Lots of changes happening there.
So 2019 comes along. Tell me about the trespass at Nancy Pelosi's house.
Yeah. So I mean, this is like kind of often sort of lost in the annals of Loomerdom, but I think that this really tells you a lot about Laura. So she's off of Twitter and she's doing these stunts. I think she's still on Periscope though. So we're getting a lot of like live streaming. And so basically what she does is she goes out to California and she tricks these undocumented immigrants. She picks them up at a Home Depot and she says, come do some yard work for me. But instead they show up she leads them to one of Nancy Pelosi's houses. And Pelosi is gone at the time, but basically they start doing this kind of stunt. So I believe she has sombreros. She starts doing a lot of like showing up at places in California and trespassing. And I said to her, I was like, Laura, the police are going to get called here. These guys are undocumented. They might get deported. I mean, do you feel a little that it was a little unfair of you to trick these people like this and kind of play with their lives? And she said no. So there you go.
She, would end up doing a similar thing at Gavin Newsom's house, where they show up and hop the wall and stage a little stunt where people are wearing sombreros and fake mustaches. What she was trying to capitalize on is that, this is at a time where the Trump administration is coming under a lot of heat for child separations and stuff. The immigration policies they were doing during the first Trump administration. California had sort of established itself as a sanctuary state. So that's why she's in California.
So she loses that CARE lawsuit mercifully. I mean, like, thank God. That would have like absolutely perverted all sense of reality for me had that succeeded. She's banned from Facebook, Instagram, and labeled a dangerous individual. I had mentioned InfoWars, but a lot of people were getting deplatformed at that time. It became a huge issue, obviously, and Elon Musk taking over X. She gets banned from PayPal. Will, that's your reporting. And she says that she has $40,000 in credit card debt.
Yeah, I mean, we start to see a lot of mentions of Laura's financial issues. That she's trying to demonstrate how her life has been ruined by deplatforming. And the other thing I would note here is the care lawsuit comes with like something like at least $100,000 in legal fees that it's ruled that she has to pay on Care's behalf. She's actually currently, as we speak, still suing her own lawyer in that case for legal malpractice, saying, you duped me into filing this case or not settling it earlier. And he sort of says, I don't know, you really wanted to file it. And so
these people love to sue. I mean, it's like, you have to like, for me in my mind, it's like, to get to a lawsuit place, it just got to be a real issue. There's got to be something like substantial, but these lawsuits just fly around.
Yeah, and she loves suing over deplatforming. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like they just use it as like a stand-in for a press release. I mean, especially Larry Klayman. When's the last time Larry Klayman won a lawsuit? When's the last time he even went to trial? I mean, it's it's around this time that Laura Loomer just starts suing a metric shit ton of people, publications. She's suing platforms. The publications she's suing is just anybody who called her like white supremacist or alt-right because it led to her getting deplatformed, that sort of thing. Again, I think what you said earlier, Will, is right. She can't use Twitter anymore to get attention. So she's having to go these sort of more extreme routes. She can't just like post something crazy and get articles written or trend on the site. She has to go to these really extreme lengths to attract that kind of attention. She has to do increasingly extreme things.
And at around that same time, one of the extreme things, she attempts to disrupt the Women's March. She accuses the organizers of anti-Semitism. And then we have, oh my God, how do we even describe these people? So Ali Alexander, Jacob Wall. I'll take Ali Alexander. Someone else please explain.
I can take
Jacob Wall. So I'll just say Ali Alexander is a political operative. Also, Ali Akbar is his name. And you may be familiar with him being the kind of face of the Stop the Steal movement that helped, spear on January 6th. I don't want to go too deep into him other than to say he's extraordinarily eccentric and has some pretty shady things going on in his past that we don't need to go on because it's not his turn at the Who the Hell Is. And who is Jacob Wall? Because Jacob Wall, is a lol cow of years past.
I know. All right, it took us this long to finally say the word lol cow.
Yeah.
Just very briefly, Jacob Wall was this young man who would team up with a guy named Jack Berkman in DC, and they would kind of concoct often sort of sexual assault smears against Democrats or Republicans who were opposed to Trump, and they would dupe the most credulous people in history on Craigslist and be like, we're filming a TV show about, it's House of Cards, and I need you. We invented this figure named Elizabeth Warren, so you need to hold this press conference, and it's all for a TV show, and accuse her of many sex crimes, and then only later would these people discover that Elizabeth Warren's a real person, and blah, blah, blah. But anyways, I mean, this is, I feel like for this episode, we should have a couple like audio tags that go like, Loomer moment.
Real trap shit.
I mean, like, this is one of the most iconic. The trip to Minnesota is an iconic moment.
Do you remember like when way back in the day, MTV used to have buzz clips, right? Where it was like a track was like really, really banger. Like Smells Like Teen Spirit was like one of the first like ones that was that went off as a buzz clip. This is like a Laura Loomer buzz clip. This is one of the singles. Everyone bought this album.
So this is another one that has like some kind of mainstream crossover potential online. But basically the three of them, they're obsessed with this idea that Ilhan Omar married her brother, which is like total BS. I looked into it. It all comes from one anonymous forum post on like a Minneapolis, people deep into Minneapolis lore or what have you. Like someone was like, hey, and she married her brother. And then it's all spun out from that. But basically they travel around. They act like they're in Mogadishu, that they're in like an Uber. And they're just like, yeah, it's crazy. I think that car Omar's following us. Or they put out this video, as it says, I mean, they put out a whole documentary, quote unquote, where they're like in an Airbnb and it's like, I think someone's going to try and kill us.
Yeah. Ali Alexander has like a bulletproof vest on, talking on speakerphone, like pacing around, clearly an Airbnb of like.
Is there some scene where they go to like knock on a door with like really dramatic music and it's like, and there's like knock on the door and it's like, hello? I guess no one's here.
Yeah, that's the climax of the film, dude.
Yeah, we're going to confront Ilhan Omar about marrying her brother. And so they go to her district office and it's like a Saturday or like no one answers the door. And then again, they go to Omar's house and it's just like, okay, Laura's going up to the door. Okay, no one answered it. Well, I guess we'll go back home.
Yeah, and the whole stunt was that they were going to like try to get her to sign a sworn affidavit that said she didn't marry her brother. Which I'm not a legal expert, but I don't think you can just like present somebody a piece of paper and be like, yeah, this is a sworn affidavit.
Perjury trap.
I think it now. Don't you need like a notary for that or something? I don't know, whatever. So despite all of this, Laura is really starting to get treated like a commodity in the Republican Party. You know, she had kind of had her moment, you know, on Sean Hannity. Rush Limbaugh, I remember, would speak glowingly of her. In the media circuit, you know, a lot of big personalities really kind of rallied behind her. I mean, she was a content machine for them. You know, they got to feature this crazy video that, you know, where somebody would go out and scream at James Comey the way all of their listeners fantasized about, like, you know, dude, if I saw James Comey, I would tell him that he's a criminal. You know, it's like somebody's doing it, right? So they loved Laura. But she starts to get some support from like people with some real power. Laura Loomer has an email list. I remember I reported out a story in 2019 about Jim Jordan sending a fundraising pitch related to the Trump impeachment that happened that year using her email list, which presumably means that Jim Jordan, one of the highest profile, most powerful Republicans in the House, was working openly with Laura Loomer, or thought people, you know, the people that gobble up Laura Loomer stuff, this can be perfect for me. That year, Laura also gets press credentials at CPAC. It didn't last very long, but I think we were both there that year, Will. Right?
I think she went after both of us, or I know she went after me, that she was, you know, she was Loomering people at CPAC. And that's just, you know, that's bad for the brand. I mean, this was when CPAC was seen, they realized that they got more attention by inviting the mainstream media in. And they were sort of like, look, you know, a little heckling is fine. But, you know, she went into the press pen, which is supposed to be the safe space for the press. And she started yelling at Oliver Darcy. Of CNN.
She really had it out for Oliver Darcy. They all did. You know, for some reason they thought he was the like number one reason InfoWars got kicked off of everything. So
also, Oliver is a person of color, and I think that can't be underrated. Like, he's one of the few on the beat, right? So I always thought there was that element really in why he was targeted, certainly by figures like Alex Jones.
Mm-hmm.
They pull her press pass. She's not very happy about it. During this time, she's also, you know, still just kind of experimenting, working around, trying to figure out some way to keep the show, the Laura Loomer show, going. There was a publication called The Jewish Voice, which had, according to some, you know, employees I was talking to there who were not down with Laura Loomer, had given her the login credentials for their Twitter account. And you could kind of tell like when it happened, because the tweets from this publication just, you know, I'll just say, you know, I think I could get, you know, a passing grade if you sat me down and you're like, here's 2 tweets. Which one did Laura Loomer post? She's also, you know, making a big stink about fundraising for her independent journalism. I'm an indie reporter. I can't use social media. The mainstream media hates me. Nobody likes me. I need your support. And I'm banned from all these platforms. I can't use PayPal or whatever. So the best way to help me out is to send checks to this PO box. And I don't remember how I got this idea, but I decided to Google the PO box and figure out. I was like, "What's up with this PO box? I don't know." And it turns out that PO box was for a group called United West, which is a just kind of boomer tier, like anti-Muslim hate group. It's been logged by places like SPLC and stuff. Laura was working with this group, but was very quiet about it publicly, which I thought was interesting. And as I looked into it, I mean, it's very clear she was on the payroll of this anti-Muslim group, working like doing her independent journalism and then not disclosing the link, or that like money given to her was going to this group who was processing it. And I'm just going to play a video real quick in addition to just doing the anti-Muslim shit for this group. This is one of those groups that's like very anti-Muslim but under the auspice of being like very pro-Israel, right? And there's video of her shilling for a trip to Israel where you can join this group to go check out the border wall. And I just think it's interesting.
Hey guys, Laura Loomer here. I want to personally invite all of you to come on a fact-finding expedition with me to Israel from May 25th to June 4th, 2019. We're going to be checking out Israel's border security system. This includes walls, fences, drones, tunnel technology, things that the Israelis have developed in order to protect their borders and make sure that their country is safe. For years now, Israel has been perfecting their systems to prevent terrorist infiltration.
Where does Laura Loomer go from here, guys? She decides she's going to run for office because there's no other way to really get back on Twitter. So that becomes her main thing, right? That becomes the main reason for her run for Congress, which happens in Florida's 21st congressional district.
Right, because if you were an elected official, well, you could be on Twitter and you would have a check mark. So it's like, bam, if I run for office, they have to let me back on.
Yeah, it is incredible. I mean, that sounds like a joke, Jared, but it is true that so much of her idea was, I need to be back. You can let me back on Twitter. You have to, if I'm a politician. And so she chooses this Florida district represented by Democrat Lois Frankel, and she's able to win the primary because Republicans realize they will lose this district. and indeed, as we will discover, that was the right assumption.
So, as cynical as this campaign seems, she's getting support from some interesting figures. Lara Trump, Trump's daughter-in-law, campaigns with her. She gets some praise from the GOP chair at the time, who calls her a rock star, and she's bankrolled by some interesting people. She's getting money from some weird sort of right-wing techie guys.
She also gets money. It's right in the middle of the COVID time, and that's the focus on things. But actually, Lydia Brimlow, who is one of the heads of the white nationalist group VDARE, she donates the maximum to Laura's campaign. And so that is, I think, important to underline, just because white nationalists are willing to overlook her being Jewish, or, in the case of VDARE, they're kind of mixed on that question, and fund her campaign.
So she wins the primary. Trump endorses her. Roger Stone endorses her. Will, does she win?
No, she loses by 22 points.
And she texts a friend something interesting. What does she say?
Yeah, so this is another text I got from a friend of hers. She said after she lost, I feel as though I don't have purpose anymore and don't exist. Again, this kind of like, I feel like Laura is always sort of outrunning this like incredibly deep depression and sort of this oblivion, and she achieves it through like political attention or escapes it and sort of success. But because so much of what she does is stunt based, it often, ends in disaster.
Musical theater in public and Joy Division in private.
Yes, good way to put it.
So we're going to fly through the next couple years, 2021, 2022. What we're seeing is a lot more of the same. Laura continues to try to sue people. She's trying to appeal these lawsuits when they fail. Nothing is working out. She is active on alternative platforms like Telegram, Gab, Getter. Her branding at this point is now that she's the most banned woman in the world. She publishes a memoir with that title, Loomered, How I Became the Most Banned Woman in the World. 2022, she runs again for office, this time in Florida's 11th congressional district, challenging the incumbent there, Daniel Webster. That one, how'd she do in that one, Will?
Well, she actually did a lot better, because this is a conservative district. So if she had won the primary, she would have been sent to Congress. And she only lost by 6,000 votes or 7% of the vote, which, seems like a lot. But, that's pretty darn close for she's running against an incumbent longtime congressman and, really just barely lost there. So that was one I was closely watching on election night. And because her whole point was, I'm going to go to Congress and I'm going to Loomer Ilhan Omar for real this time. And I just couldn't have imagined that. So, in this case, she stopped it. But I think that this was when everyone should have known that Trump was going to win the primary in 2024, when Laura 100%. Got this close in the midterm.
100%. 100%. She refused to concede the election. I'll say that, alleging that there were irregularities. This is probably just going to happen in every single election. Republicans lose from now until the end of time. She's still doing conspiracy theories, whatever. Mike, you have a note in here about something she did do in 2022 that I think we should stop and talk about, which is that she attends a conference. What was it?
Yeah, it was a conference hosted by American Renaissance, which is probably the most well-known white supremacist conference in the country. She was speaking to a room full of people who are, part of the white supremacist movement. The best way to understand American Renaissance is that it's kind of like academic white supremacy. There's a lot of emphasis on things like race and IQ. The idea that white people are predisposed to have a higher IQ than black people or whatever. This is just her willingness to associate with them is noteworthy. But we have audio here. Remember, I said I felt bad for her for the way she was harassed. I think that's an important distinction because she turns around and tells that same audience, I stand with the people who call me slurs.
It's kind of a double standard, right? They want to talk about free speech, but then when you say that you're a free speech absolutist and you say, well, free speech is for everybody. That includes people who, will call me a kike openly, right? I don't ban people for calling me that. I don't ban people for, calling me slurs because as a free speech absolutist, we have to understand that free speech wasn't created for people that we like. It's for people that we don't always disagree with or people that are offensive or sometimes derogatory towards us. And that's why I so desperately hope to get to Congress someday so that I can truly re-platform the deplatformed and be a voice for all Americans, regardless of whether I agree with them or not.
A few lines later, she says to the same audience, I openly campaigned as a supporter of Christian nationalism, which is a very interesting thing from a person who brands herself as, a Jewish victim of anti-Semitism.
Actually, a conservative Jewish female journalist victim of anti-Semitism. Around this time, I forget what year it was, but she also makes a appearance at a Nick Fuentes event, one of the conferences that he hosts alongside CPAC. And going ahead into 2023, she's still kind of in the orbit of MAGA land. She's appearing at Mar-a-Lago events in Florida. She's posting about election integrity, censorship. Something happens here in 2023 that, to me, seems to be the start of Laura kind of turning life back around, which is that Rumble, the alternative video platform with investments from Peter Thiel, JD Vance, that sort of thing, inks a podcasting deal with her, paying her, according to the New York Times, something like the tune of $15,000 a month to host a show called Loomer Unleashed. Loomer Unleashed.
And isn't this a beautiful moment? Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right, Jared. I think this is when Laura, this time in the wilderness, basically from her Twitter ban, these losing congressional campaigns, when she starts to sort of come back into the Trumpist fold, she clearly seems a little less desperate for money, is talking less about this miserable life she's supposedly leading, and things start looking up here, and I'm sure she's making bank from this, because if it's $15K a month, the overhead, I've seen the show, overhead doesn't look to be that much in terms of production value. I mean, I think she had to build a little backdrop and go from there. And so yeah, I mean, she starts to, I think, have a little breathing room in terms of what kind of right-wing activism she's going to participate in.
How many viewers is this even getting? I can't imagine it would be that many. Is it really much more than posting through it? I would be shocked. And she's getting $15K per month.
Her main rival posting through it.
Competing for the same audience very hard.
It's so hard to tell because, I hopefully, if all goes well, the week this episode comes out, I'll have a piece about Rumble. But I'm just saying the stats on that website are sus. I think that website, I can't prove it 100%, but if somebody told me that website was overrun with bots, that site's just botted up, I would believe it.
It's botted to hell. I mean, you watch Jeremy Hambley at the Quartering, and he'll be just talking on stream. He's like, I need money. I'm so broke. I need money. And then he'll have supposedly 30,000 viewers. And I mean, there's just no way. I mean, this is kind of a digression, but yeah, I completely agree with that. And that is relevant to the image of what is the Laura Loomer audience? How dedicated is her fan base? One wonders.
So we're starting to get closer into the modern day here. So Laura inks this Rumble deal. So around this time, actually a little earlier before she gets the Rumble deal, Elon Musk buys Twitter, renames it X, and lets Laura back on. And you get to pay a monthly fee and get a check mark. So Laura is back on Twitter, or X. She's got this Rumble deal paying her the tune of, I did the math real quick, $180,000 a year for a podcast, posting through it. Listeners, come on, we can do better than this. Patreon link is in the description. But yeah, she's really, Loomer's getting her groove back. And not everybody is happy. Something I think we should talk about here is Milo Yiannopoulos. Loomer comes back on Milo's radar, and he really just starts to go on a warpath against her. Do you remember how that even started, Will? What was the deal?
Milo and Laura obviously are very similar figures for a time. I mean, they drive the left.
He worked on her campaign.
Yeah, exactly. And so, to be honest, I don't think it's clear why they had this falling out. It's the narcissism of small differences. But basically, he at some point starts working for Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is Laura's arch enemy for various reasons. And she accuses him of ghostwriting Marjorie's memoir and also living with her as a renter. Nothing romantic, I don't think. And then they start this very vicious, because these are people who having been on the receiving end myself of both of their attitudes, can be very vicious, and so they start tearing into each other, and they obviously have a lot of receipts on one another as well, and so they sort of start just threatening, I'm gonna reveal your true dark secret, Laura Loomer.
What's happening in 2024? I personally went offline for the entire year, but I did notice that there was a presidential election taking place. Mm-hmm. And I did notice that a president who had been charged with a bunch of crimes was doing surprisingly well, was punching really above expectations. And during that time, he certainly had some people rush to his side and support. One of them was Laura Loomer.
Trump really embraces Loomer. And this is because, as far as I can tell, Laura Loomer has this kind of kamikaze, just she has devoted her life to Trump. And she will talk all the time about how she can't have a family, she can't have a boyfriend, although she has a boyfriend now. But at the time, she would say, I can't do this stuff because I have this singular dedication to Donald Trump.
I have to ask you, Laura, you're single, correct?
Yeah.
So how intimidating are you for a fellow to ask you out?
Well, it's
it's not like I'm vicious in that sense, but a lot of people just can't handle my lifestyle, and I'm very busy. Just, I'll tell you a funny story. I dated somebody one time, and they thought that I was, too focused on Trump, and they said that I gave my activism in support of President Trump more attention than I gave them. And it's like, yeah, that's right, because Trump is more important than you. Trump is going to save our country. And so you need to understand that President Trump is more important than you. And if you think that you're more important than President Trump, then you have some kind of like delusional personality.
Trump sees this and he loves it. And she's attacking DeSantis like crazy. And so he says, at one point, the campaign is going to hire Laura. Someone, maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene, leaks it to the New York Times. Everyone around Trump goes, oh no, and quashes that. And so she that is a big grudge she still carries to this day. But she's in the orbit.
Yeah, the Trump campaign brings her to the first and only debate that Trump had against Kamala Harris. She joined Trump at a 9/11 memorial event. And I mean, Laura has always been just 100% down with Trump, no matter what, ride or die, in the truest sense. And told the Washington Post, quote, "I'm happy to dedicate all my time to helping Trump, because if Trump doesn't get back in, I don't have anything." But this didn't make everybody so happy because, the way that Laura would try to help out Trump would be doing things like going on Twitter and saying that if Kamala Harris wins, the White House is going to smell like curry and resemble an Indian call center.
That's fucking disgusting, by the way.
Disgusting. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene said the remarks were, quote, appalling and racist.
Yeah.
That's rough when Marjorie Taylor Greene is like the voice of morality.
Laura would say some truly insane stuff. And, and yet she kept getting into Trump's circle. I mean, he clearly saw her as a true devotee.
Now, at one point, we have to talk about this, but at one point, Laura Loomer starts joining Trump on the campaign trail on the plane, flying around with Trump, reportedly getting a lot of personal one-on-one time with Trump, which leads some people, not us, we would never say this, but some people speculating that maybe Trump and Laura had that special kind of spark, that special kind of Hollywood hot pink romance. I wouldn't say that, but that's what some people thought. Maybe that was
speculation was very difficult for me to process, because as soon as I would get into the into the plane where supposedly this would have happened, I would immediately start I would get very pale and my palms would start sweating, and I couldn't imagine anything more. I was like, I can't get there because I can't imagine what that would look like.
Yeah, I mean, so this obviously both, I think, within Republican circles and then kind of more broadly in sort of political media, people were saying, why is this, relatively young woman so close with Trump? This woman who's had all the stunts that we've lined up. Why would this guy who wants to be president hang out with her? And the most famous example obviously would be Bill Maher, who said, hey, maybe they're sleeping together on his show. Sort of made this subtext clear. And obviously Trump, we know, has been known to have affairs. And so he said this, and this is, according to Laura in her court sworn testimony, the idea that she was having an affair with Trump, as kind of typified by the Bill Maher remarks, created a huge saga for her within Trump world, that she felt that she was going to be in the White House staff were Trump to win. She was going to be like a James Carville type kind of post-administration media figure. And basically she says, instead, Chris LaCivita, I believe, called her up and said, hey, you're off the plane. Don't want to see you again, essentially.
Oh, so everything came crashing down, according to Laura, because of that. She's also, continuing to fight with Marjorie Taylor Greene. There's one remark she made. You have a note here, Will. Arby's in the pants.
Yes.
I feel like I memory hold this. What was this?
So this is just part of her lawsuit against Bill Maher. But basically, she just truly inexplicably broke the judge's orders and introduced this deposition onto the record. And it's with her, and she says at one point, the lawyer's trying to make the point that for HBO is trying to make the point that Laura, wouldn't you say you've used some figurative language in the same way that Bill Maher did about this, affair? Wouldn't you say that you have said, for example, that Marjorie Taylor Greene has Arby's in her pants? And so the which Laura was trying to make the point with that tweet is that she's saying Marjorie Taylor Greene is, she's been around the block with other men, right? And now
she's calling her a slut.
Okay, well, I think we need to get a little bit more narrow about this because it's how people understand. Because people are not going to understand what Arby's in the pants really means. Arby's sells roast beef.
Oh man, are we really?
Yeah,
we're really doing
that?
So
Arby's sells roast beef.
Yeah, so she's saying it's like roast beef down there.
Is a male supremacist trope. It was like a sort of thing that they would. Is it a roasty? Is that the term?
Yeah, they would call like a woman a roasty.
And it's a very crude term that you would apply to a promiscuous woman with the idea that her vagina is left looking like roast beef.
That's exactly right.
And I think why this is useful is not just that this catty thing between the two of them or whatever. It's Laura using the language of male supremacists, of misogynists that she hovers around. I mean, she hovers. We've seen throughout this thing her willingness to hover around people who are, really quite disturbed. And it's a term that I'd be hard pressed to find another woman using to describe another woman. It's not something you would typically see unless you were very, very online and confused.
What did Laura say when the lawyer asked her about this?
Well, so the lawyer says, so what did you mean by she has Arby's in her pants? And she goes, I've heard because Laura doesn't want to admit what she means. And so she says, I've heard she likes to stick sandwiches in her pants. And the lawyer goes, really? Roast beef sandwiches? Yeah. And how do you know this? It's just a known fact. We all know this. And so and then the HBO lawyer goes, this is kind of crazy. The lawyer just goes, God, you're such a coward. It's pretty wild. but this and Michael hit on this. One thing that is kind of a thread throughout Laura's career is just absolutely hating other women and hating particularly Republican women. And I think that's part of why she has a feud with Marjorie Taylor Greene, because anyone who sort of threatens to be like the biggest Republican woman or the most prominent person next to Trump is going to come under attack.
I want to point out something else in their feud, which is worth noting. Big surprise. We haven't covered this really, and I don't think we have time for it now. I may do in my final thoughts. But I mean, since October 7th, obviously, it's unsurprisingly, Laura's been very activated on the pro-Israel side. And Marjorie Taylor Greene quietly becomes also more and more critical of Israel as well. So the two of them are really opposed figures, and they're fighting for sort of the future of MAGA, I guess I would say, because I really think we've covered it on the show a lot, but there's a sort of philo-Semitic, anti-Semitic warring that is going on ideologically in the MAGA space, and they're on either side of that.
So after Trump gets back into office, she has done all kinds of stuff. I mean, she's seemingly larger than life than she's ever been, having more of an impact than she ever has. There have been, like I mentioned at the top of the show, a lot of career government workers that have lost their jobs under the Trump administration because Laura decided, for whatever reason, they weren't a good fit.
Yeah, if you had told me that the woman who had handcuffed herself to Twitter headquarters and been sprayed with her assistant's pinky blood in the process or what have you, that she would someday be sort of a shadow cabinet secretary, that she's able to sort of fire people from the government at will, I wouldn't have believed you. But she has become so powerful, and I think she often sort of represents the interests of certain factions within MAGA. I think they'll be like, I want to get rid of this guy, and so why don't I dig up this tweet where he said, I'm a never Trumper or something, and then I'll get this guy fired via Laura. But then sometimes I think she does it on her own. But I mean, she's really able to just create these agenda items out of nowhere. Like, she got really mad that Palestinian children who had their legs blown off in Gaza were entering the country temporarily to get, amputation surgeries or to get rehabilitation. And she was just like, why are we letting these terrorists in? And within something like 24 hours, the State Department had pulled every Palestinian's medical visa. And this is truly crazy stuff. But she just has this real power in the White House.
And it's not just like, oh, they're reading her tweets. I mean, Laura has had Oval Office meetings with Trump to talk about staffing.
Yeah, she said, you should fire this guy and this guy and this guy at the National Security Council. I mean, so she's really like getting into the guts in some of the most important parts of the government.
So it's sort of an ideological weeding out, right? Like, they're not sufficiently MAGA, they're not, sufficiently for Trump. There's some sign of them being woke in her mind, even if it's completely ridiculous. There's nothing there.
And then sometimes one wonders what Laura's agenda is, because sometimes she gets deep into policy issues that I cannot believe she really cares about. So
yeah,
she'll tweet.
You've done some reporting on this, and it's so fascinating to me.
True passion about this. So Laura will, number one, she really hates a lot of RFK's MAGA picks. So, for example,
me too. Yeah.
So Casey Means at FDA, going to be the Surgeon General. She's gone on like rampages against her, and so she's basically, a lot of MAGA people have accused Laura. She went after Vinay Prasad, who was another kind of RFK guy who was in charge of a lot of vaccine approval. She went on a rampage against him and got him temporarily fired. And so a lot of people in MAGA have said, hey, I think you're being paid by Big Pharma. And then Laura will kind of dodge around the question. I haven't been paid exactly. The denial is very, very specifically tailored. But then she gets into other things that I just cannot imagine she cares about. She'll say, we need to extend this exemption that allows Chevron to export Venezuelan oil, or else China will move in with Hugo Chavez. We just have to get this Venezuelan oil. So clearly are a couple companies that will benefit from this exemption being extended. And she has such a passion about it. She was going off on some contracting bid for the space station. She was like, this company cannot be allowed to win the space station. This other company has to get it. And I mean, it's just the agenda, I think, is so obvious. There's really no proof that she's being paid by anyone, but and then she'll just say, well, I've always been passionate about Venezuelan oil, or things like this.
Yeah, she alternates from being like, Marjorie Taylor Greene's got Arby's in the pants. Also, drilling licenses given to Chevron in Venezuela, really, they're under consideration. And I've always felt really strongly about, export oil in Venezuela.
And she's getting into like the differences between like West Texas Intermediate crude and these different kinds of crude oil. And it's just like, I'm sorry, I can't believe this is just coming from you naturally.
Yeah, you've just got to be kidding me.
So we're almost at the end here. I just want to do some last minute Laura Loomer things. The Supreme Court denied to hear her appeal about these lawsuits against social media companies just recently. Her free speech rights they'll never be honored, I guess, by that. So, and just the other day, she talked about with excitement the possibility that lethal force would be applied by the government against leftists, so-called Antifa, and she also mentioned Palestinians.
So luckily, Kristi Noem authorized these agents to use lethal force. She said, do whatever you need to do to protect yourself if these individuals are being violent towards you. So it's great to see that Kristi Noem is authorizing these agents to take any necessary action against the criminal protesters. But it would also be great to hear the same directive from President Trump as well, because it's not just in Portland. It's all across the country, in Chicago, in Texas, in Portland, wherever there are ICE raids taking place. You have Antifa, you have Palestinians, you have jihadist Muslims, you have radical leftists, all coming together. This red-green alliance, this terrible, terrible red-green alliance, which is ravaging our country.
It's like when Laura's not, advocating for oil licenses in Venezuela or bids to service the International Space Station or whatever. She's also really at the forefront of cheerleading some of the more I don't even know how to describe it, just violent or carceral agenda items of the Trump administration. Big promoter of Alligator Alcatraz, really just viciously anti-immigrant, has endorsed all kinds of stuff. I mean, I feel like on this episode, we barely even really explored Laura's ideology, just because it seems to, I kind of started to go down that route when we were researching it, but it seems to just change so often. It just seems to be that, like, whatever the Trump administration is doing, that's what Laura believes, right?
I think that's right. This kind of just like slavish devotion to Trump is like her whole thing, essentially. I mean, I would say, like, besides just support for Israel, I mean, that's sort of her one constant. But otherwise, it's just, Trump is right and also crush the left.
But the last thing I want to mention before we kind of zoom out and just reflect on what we've covered here is something that Laura posted today. So the day we're recording this, October 10th, it was in the news. I guess the U.S. is going to let Qatar build a military base in the U.S. And it might be too much for Laura. She said, "Never thought I'd see Republicans give terror financing Muslims from Qatar a military base on U.S. soil so they can murder Americans. I don't think I'll be voting in 2026. I cannot in good conscience make any excuses for the harboring of jihadis." Jesus Christ. This is where I draw a line.
She also says at one point, she's like, "We're going to teach Muslims to fly planes?" Like, there's no other way. It's that they're going to do another 9/11. Oh, thanks for teaching us about planes. That's I don't know, though. Her saying I'm not going to vote in 2026 is going to make people mad. They always get mad on the right when you start trying to depress the vote.
Yeah, but I feel like I've seen her say versions of this like a million times. She always snaps back in line. They all do. They always snap back in line because, like she told the Washington Post, if she doesn't have Trump, she doesn't have anything, right? All of these people need Trump for their careers to survive. So that brings us to the end here. On that note, we're going to close out this episode the same way we do all our Who the Hell Is episodes. But first, before we do, Will, I just want to thank you for hitching your wagon to us for the long haul and joining us.
I felt bad. It was going so long, and I was like, "Oh my God, this poor man!" But he was bringing so much enthusiasm throughout.
I love potting with you guys. We've all been here for many years, and Laura Loomer is obviously a topic we have followed closely all together. And so, I would have been offended if I wasn't invited on. So thank you. And if I could just jump off into the where does she go from here? I mean, I think Laura Loomer is one of the, as hopefully has come through on the episode, one of the most interesting figures in MAGA media. I think the sky is the limit for her, unfortunately, for our country. On one hand, I could see if there was sort of a changeover in the Trump White House, and Susie Wiles was out perhaps as chief of staff. I could see Laura maybe getting a job in the administration, but I think she's really most powerful with this kind of, this plausible deniability around her. They don't have to say, "Why does your press secretary say this thing about Muslims?" I would also add that one thing we haven't talked about here is that Laura remains kind of held at a distance by the White House. I mean, I don't think she has been at a lot of these influencer events. She remains really mad that she hasn't gotten kind of the coveted sort of MAGA seat at the White House press briefing. And so in a way that, like, whereas people like Benny Johnson or Jack Posobiec are sort of part of this kind of like fake White House press corps they're cultivating. I mean, she wasn't at the Antifa press conference that they had where with like Andy Ngo and people like that. So I think Laura still is lacking in the respect that she craves. And I think maybe that could be her next goal, her eternal goal in many ways.
So we're at the end now. Considering everything we've thought about, talked about, nearly losing our minds in the course of this episode. Will Sommer, who the hell is Laura Loomer?
She's a bundle of contradictions, isn't she? No, I mean she's someone who I think just to sum it up, I mean, I think she comes from a very troubled home life as a child, and she has bundled up a lot of neuroses regarding loneliness and lack of friends and anger and sort of looking, I mean, you might say looking for a father figure in Trump, and turned it into this kind of this hostility, and she's turned that against the world, and she has benefited from it by aiming it against Trump's enemies.
Jared, who the hell is Laura Loomer?
I'm going to be really short. Laura Loomer is whoever she thinks Trump wants her to be. Is what I think Laura Loomer is. I also think she is a insanely potent narcissist, entirely self-interested, and I think her obsession with Trump, has probably less to do with any really firm ideological commitments, and is likely, an equal or even more part in pursuit of protecting and bolstering her own career. But like Will, I also think the sky is probably the limit for her, and that sucks really bad. Like, I think if she ran for office again, especially in a conservative district somewhere, it is very easy for me to imagine Representative Laura Loomer from the whatever district of Southern Alabama or whatever. Mike, who the hell is Laura Loomer?
A lot of people, when they talk about, you see like the way just your average liberal person who's familiar with Laura Loomer will be like, she's crazy. And what I would say to that is that this time that we're living through right now is crazy. And the MAGA movement is a real vessel for narcissistic behavior, which is what you mentioned before. People are motivated by love and hate. And Laura's love is for herself more than anything else. And she is really motivated by that. But I have to mention that she is equally motivated by hate. And it is a hatred for Muslims. I'm not Muslim, but I'm Arab American. She hates Arab people. You can feel it in her commentary. The commentary about Indians, right? My family's mixed. My sons are mixed Arab, Indian, and white. You feel those things very acutely when you hear her commentary. She really hates those people, and she hates Muslims more than anything else. And I really think that this is a very disturbed person, just because of the hate more than anything else, and a dangerous person because of the hate. And I tried with my heart to feel bad for her about the anti-Semitic harassment, and I really did. It was really in me. But it's very hard after seeing her whole career and listening to her whole thing, and listening to her go to the American Renaissance Conference and talk about the people who say slurs and defend them and side with them, on free speech grounds. I mean, how about standing up for yourself? Yeah, that's it, basically. That she is a true hater, and she hates groups that are, I think, a lot easier to hate in America than some others.
Cuckoo caca insano, as they might say on Broad City. So that brings us to the end here, folks. Will Sommer, reporter at the Bulwark, will put links where you can go follow him on the description of this episode. The description's also going to have a link to our Patreon page. I guess, 5 or 6 weeks ago, we started putting out premium episodes every week for our supporters on Patreon. It helps the show grow. $5 a month. You get extra content. We kind of let our hair down a little bit on those episodes, so come join us for some laughs.
The next Patreon is gonna detail some of the music currently embraced by the MAGAverse, including Creed, Three Doors Down, Disturbed, a very particular era of music. So I would urge you to join us.
And if I have time this weekend after editing this episode, there may or may not be an exclusive Posting Through It Butt Rock song that debuts on that premium episode. So be sure to check it out. Will, thanks again so much for joining. Any final words?
One final thing I would say is when Laura ran for Congress, she was representing the villages, which was a lot of old people, and they had a chant for her that I thought would be a good one for people to keep in their minds as we finish here, which is "Boomers for Loomer, Boomers for Loomer."
You know what? Now that you said that, I think that I normally play
real dystopia hours.
I normally play us out with some music, but I think that's going to play us out today. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Not a boomer.